Details on a meeting that he, the former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Vusi Pikoli, and Mabandla had in July 2007. Mabandla had apparently expressed surprise that perpetrators in the poisoning of the Reverend Frank Chikane were to be arrested. Counsel for the Justice Department, Advocate Khumutso Moroka, is leading Ackerman's evidence at the TRC cases inquiry in Newtown, Johannesburg.
My question is, at no stage did she say, stop these prosecutions?
No, she said she was of the firm impression that there were not going to be prosecutions. That's what she stated.
Can you then answer the question after saying that, Mr. Ackerman?
She didn't stop it. She was not aware of any prosecution.
The question is, the minister did not say stop prosecutions.
No.
She did not ask you to stop prosecutions.
No.
There was nothing unlawful about her asking what is going on.
No.
Johannesburg Emergency Management Services say no major incidents have been reported despite ongoing heavy rains. Authorities are urging motorists to drive cautiously, keep a safe following distance and avoid flooded roads and low-lying bridges. Residents, especially in informal settlements, are warned to stay away from river streams and drainage channels and to closely monitor children. Faith-based groups are also advised to avoid conducting rituals in rivers during this period. City of Johannesburg EMS spokesperson Robert Mlaudzi says water rescue teams remain on high alert.
We're pleading with our faith-based organizations who normally visit river streams like this one to conduct cleansing and baptism rituals, to stay away from river streams like this one during this rainy period. From our side, as the City of Johannesburg Emergency Management Services, together with our disaster management monitoring teams, our specialized teams which respond to water-related emergencies, which is our Swift Water Rescue Unit, we remain on high alert.
The BBC has uncovered evidence that women who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein were housed by him in at least 4 London flats. One of the women Epstein abused, Virginia Giuffre, told the Metropolitan Police in 2015 she had been a victim of an international sex trafficking scheme with links to London. The BBC's Chichi Izundu has the details.
The Met Police, at the time of Virginia Giuffre's complaint, said they weren't the right force to investigate. This time round, we showed them our investigative findings. We showed them the flats. They didn't directly comment on any of that. But they have said that they are fully engaged alongside other forces trying to find out more. They're also in contact with authorities in the United States to seek further detail and ensure information sharing.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the decision to establish the International Panel on Inequality is one of the most consequential outcomes South Africa's G20 Leaders Summit held last year. I'm Mondela Mbana for SFM News Headlines at 3:30.
In sports, the Sawa Soweto derby takes centre stage this weekend. Tebogo honoured with Botswana banknote ahead of World Relays, and Sharks look to honour Kolisi milestone in clash against Edinburgh. More details at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And indeed, welcome to the National Pulse. Friday afternoon, still so much to talk about, no matter where you may be in the country. Some parts of South Africa, absolute sunshine. Other parts of the country, very overcast and rainy and cold, wherever you may be. However, fingers on the pulse, great to connect with you, right? So 3 hours of some of the biggest issues in the country and in the world starting now. To call in live, it's 086 000 2032, and then to WhatsApp us, text or voice note. Keep those voice notes up to 30 seconds, please. 0614 104 107. There's no question the response to the drama of yesterday, the suspension, the precautionary suspension of General Fani Masemola still continues to hog the headlines, and insofar as the why and the replacement as well, and we'll continue getting responses on that issue too, right? We'll also pick up President Ramaphosa's address on inequality, which I think is a particularly important one that we're going to touch on. And then we'll chat to Katie Katapodis just now, well, around 22:04, regarding the Lebanese journalist who was killed in a planned, targeted killing, it seems like, by Israel. And I'm talking about Amal Khalil. But we'll talk about that and the plight of journalists who are under threat, not just in Lebanon or Israel or Gaza, but in fact, many parts of the world as well. So all of that and more to come, including who's going to win the race for the UN's hot seat. There we are. This is the National Pulse.
This Freedom Month, we reflect, we remember, and we celebrate how far we've come. 30 years into democracy, South Africa continues to shape a future grounded in justice, equality, and opportunity for all, under the theme Freedom and the Rule of Law. 30 years of democratic citizenship. SAFM will bring you all things freedom, the voices, the stories, and the conversations that matter. Join us as we honor the journey and explore what freedom means today. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Right, before we get into talking to the first guest regarding the suspension of General Fani Masemola, remember this: Top Billing is back with a bold new chapter and fresh new faces leading the way. So get ready to experience the world of luxury travel, design, and inspiring stories with our dynamic new presenters. Amongst the new names, Brioni Govender, Zozibini Tunzi, Anokriev, and Sini Mivuyo Impulo. All of those people, some of them you know, some of them you don't, but you can certainly know them pretty well soon, right? So this all-new season of Top Billing premieres next week. That's Thursday, the 30th of April on S3 at 7 p.m, with a repeat coming up on Tuesdays, 9:30 p.m. on SABC 1. Top Billing is back. You don't want to miss it.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, first things first, then let's get further reaction on the news of yesterday. Maybe no surprise for most people, the precautionary suspension of the National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemola. And then, of course, we now know that the appointment then in an acting capacity of Lieutenant General Puleng Dimpani, right? Okay, reaction this time round from Action SA and their Member of Parliament, Darrelline James. Thanks for joining us, Darrelline. Appreciate you connecting on the National Pulse.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me, Ashraf.
Pleasure indeed, right. Let's talk about this. I mean, so different parties, different interest groups have different views on what just happened. What is the Action SA's position on it?
I think if anything right now, Action SA is we are just frustrated at the fact that we've had so many people acting in really crucial positions. I think for us it is about stabilizing top management within SAPS. Obviously, having a national commissioner in the dock, that compromises public trust. That also is not a good look for us as a country. But I also believe that the National Commissioner is not the only one that should have been in that dock. The new National Commissioner General Dimpani, she's the head of, she's the CFO, and she too was responsible for signing off, contracts pertaining to all of these tenders. So yeah, it is what it is. It's really frustrating for us, but it cannot continue like this.
So let's break it up, first of all. Do you, you already made the point, you can't, first of all, have top-ranking officials, doing the type of things they do. So you do agree that the person had to be removed, right? And I'm using the word removed, not even suspended, just removed, yeah?
Yeah, no, definitely. But we also know with the history of our president, he's not too keen, it appears, to remove anyone. We've had the minister in Kunu that's been suspended for how long now? He hasn't acted. yesterday he mentioned that the entire country, is being sort of impatient and pretending to be judges. We are not judges. We are victims of crime. And obviously, with what's happening continuously every day, you just hear the rot deepens. South Africans are tired of these commissions, and they actually want answers. They want actual, credible responses to what is unfolding. They want to see people in orange uniforms.
But to be clear then, are you saying, and I'm trying to break up the two between the incoming acting person and who's suspended, do you think that the president's got it wrong in this precautionary suspension of Fani Masemola?
No, it doesn't have it wrong. I think it's needed. According to the PMFA, the National Commissioner is the accounting officer. So he needs to account for everything that happened under his watch. Even though he continues to claim, yes, I stopped the contract, but a lot happened under his watch. So unfortunately, with great titles comes great responsibility, and he has to account for everything that has happened.
All right. Did the president go far enough with suspension, or should he have done even more? Could he have done more?
I think obviously now there are proceedings on the way. So yes, let's suspend him. Let's start there until, like the president said yesterday, the Madlanga commission concludes, and you have a more clear indication of the list of people that where SAT should probe further in terms of investigation.
Okay, so you do agree that for those that have said, he needed to be axed immediately, notwithstanding any other issues around potential labor implications, you would agree then with the president the process must be suspension first, and then we'll see what happens next.
Yes, the process suspension. My only problem that I have, Ashraf, we say, let's follow the process in terms of labor law, but then you have suspensions that continues for over a year and over 2 years. We've heard this in the ad hoc committee. So yes, we call for suspension so that we can obviously be in line with legislation, but then suspension for 2 and 3 years, probably the reason why many South Africans are frustrated, because the minute we hear suspension, we know it stops there, and we know someone comes in and they act for years on end, and that's the end of it.
What then? Let's then move on to Puleng Jimpani. You've already mentioned that you have a particular concern about it. Tell me about it.
My concern is, I was listening last night after her appointment. I was listening to some of the interviews, and I went back on my questioning when she appeared before the ad hoc committee. And it was almost as if though she was blame shifting. I mean, we were questioning her about the task teams. How do you have task teams for 5 years? How do you have over 500 million spent on task teams? You keep on signing it off without having any controls in place to ensure that we are actually getting value for money. And, she mentioned that in 2024, they set up something a tool that will be able to tell them the effectiveness of this. But it was almost too much too late after this country has already lost millions to operations, to task teams that's deployed throughout this country, and we don't see an impact. Case in point is in the Western Cape. There's a task team that's been deployed there for over 5 years, 500 million spent on that task team. There's no impact to rather have the SANDF deployed there. She's the person signing off on all of these things. When she was questioned on operational matters, she distanced herself completely from it and said, what, that's not my responsibility. This isn't my responsibility. I'm just wondering now, does she hold the needed know-how in terms of, how to detect, how to actually deal with detecting crime and just addressing crime, ordinary crime that many South Africans are facing.
So to be clear then, as we wrap up, you suggesting, as you ask the question, you are expressing doubts about her position, right?
Yes, I think I do, because I also looked at her CV again. This is someone that's more financially sort of, that's her strength. When it comes to operational matters within SAPS, when it comes to crime detection, when it comes to combating all of those things, I'm not sure if she's the right fit. Really, I'm not. I can see why the president chose her, because obviously what we're hearing about every day is like millions of rands being, SAPS is being looted. So obviously a watch over the person, not a watch over, operational matters. It's like, okay, we need to choose now.
Okay. Well, there you are. All very confusing, completely understandable. We'll see what happens next. Some did say that she may well be the financial controller, but can she be a good police women, which is another whole conversation completely. Thank you for your time, Geraldine James, Action SA's Member of Parliament, who played a key role, as we all know, with regard to the questions put forward to people like, many people, including the person in question, Puleng Dimpani, at the Parliament's ad hoc committee. Right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll move on to another response from the ATM. Their president is Vuyo Zungula. Vuyo, appreciate your time and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Right, give me your thoughts. What's your reaction to what we've just seen in the last 24 hours?
You know, the president is someone who is basically afraid of taking decisive action on matters that are pertaining to the well-being of the country. Because in this case, perhaps the biggest question that people need to ask is to try and ascertain, given the crisis that is there at SAPS, especially in the higher positions of authority within SAPS, what kind of leader is required to be the National Police Commissioner, especially when you see the factional fights in SAPS, when you see how most or some of the positions or people who are occupying positions are somewhat embedded in criminal elements. Is a person that is more financially skilled the appropriate person from a skills point of view, from an experience point of view, to actually uproot all of that criminality? Our view is that it is no. So what the president has done is to appoint someone for the sake of appointing, not appoint someone for the purpose of really cleaning up SAPS, restoring confidence in terms of its ability to fight crime. So that is what we are making out of this appointment.
What tells you that he's simply appointing for the sake of appointing?
The issue is with the skill set of the now acting National Police Commissioner, her experience versus the task at hand. If you look at the task at hand, it really requires someone who knows the operations of the SAPS, particularly from a crime or criminology point of view, someone who will be able to deal with the senior police generals who are implicated and embedded in the criminality working with cartels. But once you remove once you install someone, yes, with the right set of skill set when it comes to managing of finances, the issue here, it is not to turn around SAPS as a compliant or financially viable institution, but to turn around SAPS by eradicating and removing the criminal elements that make it impossible for SAPS as an institution to fight crime. And so we don't think that the now acting police commissioner possesses those skills, possesses the experience required to fulfill that task.
Is there a person you would have had in mind if you could choose?
The person that has really shown South Africans that they are forthright and they are able to go against the wind in order to protect South African citizens, it is only General Mkhwanazi. That is the one person who, if there was an appointment made yesterday and it was General Mkhwanazi, you could tell how South Africans would be somewhat confident in that appointment because of his background and the fact that he has shown the moral courage to actually stand up when even someone as senior as a police minister has gave an unlawful instruction. So that is the caliber of people that we require in that position.
Okay, isn't that's the conundrum, because he's just been appointed to head this new national policing strategy, right? And if he's been put in this acting position, acting means that he may not be permanent. And then what? In the meantime, this national overarching strategy that he's going to lead could well be even far more important than this position.
No, not at all. Because if you look at, if we're being honest, acting in South Africa, a person can act for years. Just like how even the acting Minister of Police, it was said to be like a temporary arrangement. But the manner in things they are going, we could even reach a year of a person acting in that position. So what we need here is stability. I want to emphasize this point, really turn around SAPS as a crime-fighting unit and weed out all of the criminality and the cartels that have somewhat embedded themselves in SAPS. And for that, you need someone like General Mkhwanazi. The position that is in now, yes, it is very important. However, it is not as important as the entire institution of SAPS. And any logical person would make that determination to say what becomes more important is basically, the entire institution of SAPS, and therefore if there's an opening in that regard, put him there so that he can clean the entire system instead of focusing only on one aspect.
Point made, and we're bound to get reaction on that. While we're talking about reaction, what are your thoughts from an ATM point of view regarding the appointment of Rolf Meyer as the ambassador, South Africa's ambassador to the USA?
It shows a president that is cowering down to the demands of America. And what's even more strange, it's how America put someone in South Africa who, as an ambassador to South Africa, someone who basically in his first sitting in South Africa, was speaking against our values, what we stand for, and continued with the mischaracterization of South Africa. However, South Africa then, wanting to appease the Americans, appoint someone for the sole purpose of appeasing Americans. I think that is the biggest issue that we have with Rolf Meyer. It is not a forward-looking approach when it comes to determining someone who's going to advance what South Africa stands for. And also the issue with Rolf Meyer is that he is part of his history, in our history. He was part of apartheid, being a minister, being a deputy minister. Therefore, you can't take someone with such a past and you want to make him an ambassador of South Africa. So that is the biggest issue we have with him.
Okay, got that. Thank you for your time, Vuyo Zungula, the ATM president. Interesting one about Rolf Meyer. I mean, the ATM is not the first party to say so, but for others to say, I mean, you can say maybe he's a poor choice. You can say maybe that's what you feel. You can also say that he's, too old. We should have somebody else. But can you call him an apartheid minister if he was part of a key member of a negotiated settlement and then moved on and left the Nationalist Party and then formed another party? So all of that, what happened a long time ago, because many others, for example, Pik Botha, who was part of the Nationalist Party, at some stage became part of the ANC too. So can we still say that and still hold that next to him and say, actually, he's moved on a long time ago? Well, let's get your reaction on the National Pulse.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, Stop Billing. Well, you know this, it's back, definitely with a bold new chapter and fresh new faces leading the way. Get ready to experience the world of luxury, travel, design and inspiring stories with dynamic new presenters, amongst them Zozibini Tunzi, Brioni Governor, Anokhiev, and many more, right, bringing you their unique style, energy and perspective to every moment. So this new season starts on S3, Thursday, the 30th of April at 7 p.m. and it repeats the next, on a Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. on SABC 1. Top Billing is back. You don't want to miss it.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, here's a direct reaction to the ATM's reaction.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, quick one. I think the president has taken the proper action, and Zungula and his other teammates are just throwing negative things to anything, without even thinking about the repercussions of doing things against the requirements of the law. So Zungula will always do wrong things and come here and say things in a different way. Thank you.
Okay, so you're not very happy with that. There's more on that. Here's another one related to those significant appointments from yesterday.
Hi, Ashraf. I just want to say, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is not the only policeman in South Africa. I mean, we've got a police force of over 200,000 people. So, no. Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi does not deserve to be National Commissioner. He had his chance in 2011. There was a reason why he was never made permanent. So, yeah, let's just give this lady a chance.
All right. Well, I mean, you can have 100,000 police officers, but there's only a few that can actually lead. And I mean, that's the point. There's only a couple that you can lead as well. On the other hand, from his point of view, it's not like he's being overlooked. He's got a big job coming up.
Hi, Ashraf. This is Paps from Bloemfontein. I just want to comment on the issue of suspension of General Fani Masemola. My question is everyone contravening the PMFA, will that person be criminally charged or be suspended? Because as per auditor's report, there are a lot of wasteful expenditure. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, now let's talk about the president. In fact, he said a lot of things, even when he was in Spain about a week or two ago. But he also delivered a keynote address on a big issue in our country and the world, the issue of inequality. And this address was hosted by the founding committee of the International Panel on Inequality and the Wits Southern Center for Inequality. So just hear what President Ramaphosa had to say.
That I established the Extraordinary Committee of independent experts on global inequality as part of South Africa's G20 presidency. Under the leadership of Professor Joseph Stiglitz, the committee did extraordinary work. It produced a seminal report that will form the cornerstone of the global fight for equality into the future. Drawing on extensive evidence and a broad range of views, the report outlines in clear and precise terms the scale, the drivers, and the consequences of rising inequality across the world. It is really astounding that between 2000 and 2024, the richest 1% of people in the world are said to have captured 41% of all new wealth. The poorer half of humanity captured just 1% of the new wealth that was created. The committee's report provided evidence that inequality is, in the end, a threat to democratic freedoms, to economic growth, and to general well-being of people. It would be a mistake to think that inequality is bad only for the poor. Inequality threatens the stability of societies and sustainability of economies. It worsens the effects of climate disasters, as they often happen to many countries, and steadily makes the planet less inhabitable for all people. The committee was correct when it said that the world is facing an inequality emergency. The International Panel on Inequality represents a concrete opportunity to confront this emergency. It is also an opportunity to bring together various key stakeholders, governments, and peoples from different countries to help the world to understand and address inequality.
There we are. Response to that, how do we... In fact, it's a broad question. Seriously, how does South Africa, how does the world, how do we address inequality? Meaning, are there any countries that are winning that battle, have moved successfully from inequality to equality? 3:30, here's the news headlines with Ondela Mbana.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has denied requesting police dockets, including the one of the murder of Vereeniging engineer Aman Swart. President Ramaphosa says the decision to establish the International Panel on Inequality is one of the most consequential outcomes of Africa's G20 Leaders Summit held last year. And authorities in the Free State are urging motorists to exercise caution as rainy conditions are expected to persist throughout the long weekend. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkapele.
I tell you what, to me, I've been listening to Kathy talking to Zai in the morning, and Kathy's only got one thing coming out of their mind. the Soweto Derby. It's been going on for a few days now.
Yeah, I think it's on everyone's lips. But a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, Stadium Management SA CEO Bartley Grobler has welcomed statistics that place the Soweto Derby as the biggest club football derby in the world by active in-stadium attendance in 2026 at 90,000 fans. This surpasses other major derbies, including matches at Camp Nou, currently limited due to renovations, and Argentina's Super Classico at Estadio Monumental, which hosts around 85,000 spectators. Grobler emphasized that hosting such a massive sold-out event comes with significant responsibility.
Yeah, first, it's a privilege to do so, but it's also a lot of responsibility. And I said it to my team in a meeting yesterday, we take it personal, and over the last year and a half, according to me, the experience is not how it should be. And I'm not referring to anything related to the inside of the venue and the quality of what is presented inside. The experience of getting to the venue is not up to the standard that I believe is world class. And there's been a lot of work put into that. And it's always nice when things goes well to put up your hand and say, no, it's us. And if things go bad and not according to plan, to point fingers at others. But the planning of an event of that magnitude is obviously entails a lot more than just the venue.
And you can imagine, Ashraf, 90,000 fans going to the FNB Stadium. That's a lot of fans. And every single time it's a Soweto Derby, there's always some complaint in terms of how messy it was, especially when it comes to the tickets. This time around, the stadium is going to be opened as early as 10 a.m.
But will people come that early?
Listen, if you don't want to be stuck in traffic and if you don't want to be in that mess, you can go through around 10.
Well, let's hope there's lessons learned. What is that last game? Was it the Pirates Sundowns game, right?
Yeah.
Where, there were huge issues. So let's hope big lessons have been learned.
And also there's also Gautrain saying that you can go all the way to Park Station and take a Gautrain bus to the stadium, and the return trip with the Gautrain is for free. All you need to do is just show your ticket.
Okay, there we are.
If you're going to go to the derby, if you didn't know, now you know.
No parking of the bus there, I can assure you.
Right. In terms of athletics, the Portfolio Committee on Sports, Arts and Culture has recommended that Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie dissolves the Board of Athletics South Africa over ongoing governance failures. Committee Chairperson Joe Maglua says that there has been little progress in resolving issues such as leadership instability, poor financial management, and also unpaid prize money to athletes, despite repeated assurances from ASA, the department, and South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee. The situation has worsened, and the committee has now called for decisive action to restore stability and has given the minister 14 working days to respond with his plan. Meanwhile, Botswana superstar Tebogo Letsile says that it is a proud and special moment to see his face printed on his country's banknotes. Tebogo says that the honor that was led by President Duma Boko is not just about him, but about inspiring young people across Botswana to believe in their dreams. With Botswana preparing to host the World Relay Championships from the 2nd to the 3rd of May, visiting athletes will even get a chance to use the Pula featuring Tebogo's face.
It feels great for me to be honored in that manner. It means our work is not just going down the drain. It means that our work is being recognized as a country, and we are grateful for that as the athletes, and it motivates kids to try and do much better.
In rugby, Sharks coach JP Peterson is hoping his side can make it a memorable occasion for Siya Kolisi, who is set to earn his 50th cap for the KZN franchise in their must-win Round 16 United Rugby Championship clash against Edinburgh tonight. The World Cup winning captain is named on the bench after recovering from a calf injury in what could be his final appearances for the club. The Sharks currently sitting 11th on the URC standings, 11 points behind the playoff places with 3 3 league phase matches remaining. Having also played alongside him, Peterson describes Kolisi as both a great player and an exceptional human being. And finally, in motorsport, the Turkish Grand Prix will return to Formula One calendar in 2027 for the first time in 6 years. The event will run on the Istanbul Park circuit until at least 2031, and the track is where Lewis Hamilton clinched his record equaling 7th World Drivers title in 2020. Turkey held a Grand Prix from 2005 to 2011 before dropping off the schedule, although it returned for 2 years in 2020-21 when F1 needed venues to fill the calendar during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that, Jimmy Yak. Well, here's the bottom line to you listening in. A, are you going to the Soweto Derby? B, even if you're not going, what are your expectations? What's the magic, considering it's really a Pirates Sundowns challenge for the title, right?
Of course.
Unless I got my maths wrong, yeah.
Of course.
So where does Chiefs fit into all of this? Okay.
SAFM music, crafted to make you feel real good. Handpicked just for your pleasure. Classics sounding so good, only on SAFM. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, further reaction from you. Yes, one about South Africa's ambassador, elect designate to the USA. I was going to say United Nations. That's a different person. To the USA.
Good afternoon, Mr. A. Unfortunately, most black South Africans, they are still looking at things using apartheid eyes. Ruth Meyer is the best. There is no better one than him. Balanced, a lawyer by profession, have been there in difficult time in South Africa between having to work for the National Party and for working for South Africa. No, he's the best man. There is no better one than him. Pastor, Cape Town.
Thank you. When I think of a best man, you think of people at a wedding and their best man. Is he that sort of best man? There's more.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Jethro in Bloemfontein. Ashraf, I don't know if opposition political parties have an instruction to oppose everything that is being done by someone who is leading the country and not belonging to their political parties. Because in all these shows, they provide reasons why they don't like certain people who are the choice of the president. But they never give us an understanding of whether they know the reasons why the president appointed these people. I find it very disturbing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. By the way, talking about the Turkish Grand Prix, I see now government confirming that President Ramaphosa will attend a Formula One Grand Prix later this year, no name, as part of South Africa's efforts to bring Formula One back to South Africa. Well, listen to that. I always felt that the great anomaly, and correct me if I got it wrong, is that we could host a Formula One Grand Prix or Grands Prix more than once in apartheid South Africa, and we've hosted everything else in democratic South Africa, but not a Formula One Grand Prix. That has got to change, but also has to make financial sense as well. Well, try and make sense of what is being titled increasingly so as a genocide, as opposed to a genocide, an attack to eliminate journalists. We'll talk about that to Katie Ketabotis next.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Tell you what, there's not a day that goes by. I mean, you see global warfare wherever in the world, but when you see specifically, not journalists dying just by happening to be in the wrong place at the wrong time or the right place at the wrong time, but appearing to be actual targets. Now, that appears to be the case with regard to the Lebanese journalist Amal Khalil, who was killed. But also, her photojournalist colleague, Zainab Faraj, was injured. And what's interesting around that is Amal Khalil herself made the point a couple of weeks ago of receiving direct death threats from what she claimed were from the Israeli government or their accessories, to say that's what's going to happen to you, and they gave her details about what it is. So now we know she's died, targeted attack on her. The broader question is How do we deal with that? And I've seen increasing the use of this phrase, journocide. With me, Katie Katapodis, who is clearly a journalist as well and newsroom strategist. Katie, I appreciate your time and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Hello, Ashraf. It's lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. So, first of all, what do you make? I mean, and I've seen some of your tweets about the death of Amal Khalil, right? As a journalist yourself, I mean, that must resonate emotionally more than others.
Very much so. You know, Ashraf, it is nothing less than absolutely horrific. What has happened to Amal Khalil is something that should never, ever have happened. From the evidence before us, what we see here is very much a targeted attack in what many are calling a double and possibly a triple tap. And what this essentially means is that, when you talk about a double tap, is that you're targeted once, you run to a place of safety, and that place of safety is struck again. And from the evidence, what we're seeing in front of us at the moment, and what I've been reading, in fact, what the Lebanese Prime Minister himself and the Committee to Protect Journalists themselves are saying is that this was very, very much targeted. We know that Amal was traveling with a colleague, and there was a car that was struck in front of them. They ran to cover a nearby home. The home was then struck. And for me, the most awful information to come out of this is that there are reports suggesting, Ashraf, that it took rescuers up to 7 hours to get to her because they were prevented from getting to her. And essentially, she was trapped under the rubble. They were making calls to family, to their newsrooms, while under the rubble, and eventually Amal Khalil succumbed to her injuries.
Yeah.
It's horrific and should be condemned in the strongest manner.
Yeah, I certainly followed that story of exactly that. She was alive, so she didn't die on the spot. And yes, there was this prevention, even I think, of the Red Cross or Red Crescent being able to provide some sort of support to them anyway, right? So, horrific as it is, help us understand the why. Why would she be targeted?
So, that's such an interesting question. We should start off with the premise that it's never okay to target journalists. It's a war crime. It's a crime that should be condemned very loudly and internationally. The why is such an interesting one. One could only imagine that she was targeted, Ashraf, because perhaps her reporting was not what they wanted to hear. Now, from what we've read, and I wasn't aware of Amal Khalil before as a journalist, but all the reading that I've done about her is that she was a woman who was on the ground. She was telling stories. She had such bravery and courage in the way that she was telling the stories that went back not just 1 or 2 months, but years. And she was certainly, from what it appears, a thorn in the side of what many are suggesting are Israeli officials, actually, with the level of reporting that she was doing.
So can we then, can we conclude, as someone who deals with facts all the time, that it was an actual Israeli attack on a journalist in another country, in Lebanon, not even in Israel?
So we know that the Prime Minister of Lebanon is saying that. We know that the Committee to Protect Journalists is saying that. We also know the facts on the table include WhatsApp threats that she was receiving from a WhatsApp number that other journalists internationally have contacted. So these are the facts that we have. Conclusively, in terms of the conclusive evidence, I have not seen that in front of me at the moment, but it is safe to say that the facts on the table right now seem to point in that direction. And I think the onus is on the IDF to prove that it wasn't, in fact, the case if they are denying that she was intentionally attacked.
Yeah. In fact, the Lebanese Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, in his tweet said, Israeli attacks on media workers were no longer, and I quote, were no longer isolated incidents, but an established method which we condemn. So this not even talks about just the targeting of Amal Khalil, because I think 4 Lebanese journalists have been killed in recent weeks. There's the systemic targeted attack on Lebanese journalists, and if we go back, there's been ditto for Palestinian journalists, and the commonality between those two countries that straddle Israel is Israel itself.
Well, the reality is that we've had at least 9 journalists this year alone, and we're only at the end of April, who have been killed in Lebanon. 9 journalists, Ashraf. We need to allow that to sink in and say that this is unacceptable, and it's not a coincidence. They weren't caught in the line of fire. And I have regrettably come across many people who say, well, she shouldn't have been in a war zone. It goes against the very essence of what a journalist is. Journalists are in war zones. When others run away from the fire, we run towards it. It is by the very nature of our job and our profession what we do. So it is very, very much a very serious concern internationally.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting example you give because, in a South African context, telling a journalist not to be in a war zone is telling a journalist not to report a crime in a country that undermines, state capture or healthcare. I mean, that's in a different way. That is also a war zone. So we're telling journalists then just
That's
don't do
bizarre.
anything.
It's unheard of.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. It's like telling journalists, it's telling the investigative journalists, for example, who've uncovered a whole lot in this 2 billion rand Tembisa hospital scandal that saw the death of Babita Deokaran. It's saying, well, you shouldn't have been reporting on that. It's unheard of. It's diabolical and should never be accepted as a defense or even as an excuse. This is the role of journalists, to be on the ground and to report on stories as they unfold in front of them.
What then are the protocols with regard to journalists in war zones when they're on the beach, on the ground? What can be done, what can't be done in terms of them and their relationship with countries, because often they would be with warring nations in those lands, right?
Well, I definitely think safety and security is a top priority, and I know that for many of the international journalists who are on the ground in war zones, they've got entire teams. They're with many of these international media organizations, and they do take safety very, very seriously. So in terms of protocols, it's very much about not traveling alone, try to be with your camera operator, try to be with other crew members, other journalists within your team. And from there, essentially, it is keeping in touch with your newsrooms at all times, letting them know your location, and really just communicating constantly with your editors, with your newsrooms, so that they do know your whereabouts. Is it entirely safe? Of course not. It's a war zone after all. And journalists do go into these war zones knowingly, Ashraf, but it does not, by any stretch of the imagination, mean that they should be taken out and that they should be targeted in any way. Targeting a journalist is a war crime, and it should be strongly, strongly condemned, because journalism is not a crime.
Well, if targeting of journalists is a war crime, my numbers from last year says 2025, 2/3 of all journalists that were killed at the hands of the Israeli government, right? So I'm not talking about Israel specifically, but yes, of course, them now. The question is, why do countries as a modus operandi with regard to Israel and other countries in the world, even maybe South Africa, do countries actually target journalists because they believe that they are a threat to the establishment?
Of course. And I mean, that goes without saying. And I'm not talking about Israel here either specifically, but we've seen it play out the world over. We've seen it play out the world over. Just recently, I was reading about the murder of a journalist in Greece that still to this day has not been solved. And the suggestions when journalists are attacked is that they were a thorn in somebody's side, that they were about to expose something that was going to either compromise or jeopardize people, their lifestyles, their position, their political standing, for example. And threats against journalists are a very, very common phenomenon. We do see it in South Africa. We do see threats against journalists when newsmakers, when people who are being investigated feel like they're, someone's getting too close, that they're under attack. We see it. I'm putting my SANEF hat on. As SANEF, we deal with this constantly when we've got reporters coming to us and saying, this is what happened. I mean, I sit as the chair of the Journalism Safety and Wellness Committee in SANEF, and I can tell you that just recently there was a case of a journalist who had a 10,000 rand reward put out on him on Facebook. And this was a journalist in our own country, in Johannesburg, actually, because the people that he was investigating did not like how close that he was getting.
Sure. So a bounty. So to conclude, in broad speak, can we conclude there is an active genocide in the world?
I think the targeting of journalists needs to be condemned. Is there a genocide? Unfortunately, the numbers in front of us are indicating that far too many journalists, more than ever, are dying in war zones. It's an interesting term. I only recently came across it myself. I wasn't aware of journocide before. But if this is the case, we must all hang our heads in shame and literally weep, because if it were not for journalists, Ashraf, we know this. And we're not perfect, by the way.
Absolutely.
My goodness, we are definitely not perfect.
Katie Ketabotis, appreciate your time. Thanks for those insights, journalist, newsroom strategist, but also a senior member of SENEF, as you've just heard. There we are. Journo-side, journalists under fire. What do you make of that?
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Right. Well, what about the race for the UN? You know that the current, we're talking about the current position of the Secretary General. It's a key position, and the incumbent is Antonio Guterres, right? So next year, somebody else takes over. There are 4 candidates, and they've been presenting their case, really. Let's find out more about who they are with Gustavo de Carvalho, the acting head of the African Governance and Diplomacy Program at the South African Institute for International Affairs. Gustavo, thanks for joining us here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So where are we at this point in time in this race to lead the UN?
Yeah, so we're still currently in fairly early stages of the race, and we have 3 Latin American candidates, Michelle Bachelet from Chile, from Argentina, Rebecca Grinspan from Costa Rica, and 1 African candidate, Macky Sall from Senegal. Certainly what we see at the moment is an early stage where we can still have some new candidates, some potential dark horses coming, but certainly we have at this stage somehow of a split of Rafael Grossi seem to become the preferred choice, particularly for Western countries. Rebecca Grinspan, to a certain degree, potentially being the consensus candidate and perhaps far less controversial than other candidates. And Michelle Bachelet from Chile and Macky Sall from Senegal being the 2 candidates at this stage with more reluctance from some of the permanent members, and in the case of Macky Sall, particularly reluctance from many African countries to endorse him. So an interesting space at the moment, and some front runners, but it's certainly not a done deal at this stage.
What then is the criteria? Meaning, are they obviously the best man or woman for the job? Would be the obvious thing, but I get it. There are restrictions in terms of who can actually get the job. For example, am I right that you cannot have a member from the country from the UN Security permanent member of, being a country being from a permanent member of the UN Security Council? Is that correct?
Yeah, so what you have in terms of Article 101 of the UN Charter, it is, and some resolutions that have been presented, that presents there is a formal criteria for that. So you need to provide a proven experience in international diplomacy and multilateral institutions, managerial reform capacity, ability to deal with Security Council dynamics. Very important in the case of the UN, being able to not only being fluent in English, but also in French. That becomes something that particularly some Francophone countries often do. Formally, there is no impediments for countries coming from permanent members, but what you effectively have in terms of history, it is that you do need first a candidate that is accepted by the UN Security Council, that is not vetoed by any of the permanent members of the Security Council, and that name then goes to the General Assembly for confirmation. That means that to a large degree, it's not a selection process based on popularity. It is heavily centered in terms of the acceptability of permanent members, but we do have other criteria that have been informally expected. One of them, an increasing pressure that a woman to be selected as the Secretary General, considering that in over 80 years since the existence of the United Nations, no woman has played that role. Latin and Caribbean countries have really been claiming for that to be their time, considering that they have only had Secretary General of the UN wants. But to a large degree, I think the current circumstances has a big change in terms of expectations of the very job description that the Secretary General will be doing, in terms of the crisis, of financial crisis that the UN has faced over the years, the legitimacy issues that the United Nations have faced. And that in itself, it is this mix of some of the very loose formal criteria that we have presented by the UN Charter and different UN resolutions, but certainly a lot of pressure being made at this stage by different regional groupings and different permanent members in terms of what is to be expected from that person that will be elected later.
Okay, you already made the point that that person must get the nod from the UN Security Council permanent members. So they have a veto on this appointment anyway, right? So in broader than that, what then would be the powers of the Secretary General? And I asked that question in the light of Antonio Guterres' position, where just about every day he will pronounce about this cannot be allowed to continue. And I'm talking about, say, Israel specifically with Palestine, but he may say this thing about Russia, Ukraine, and other hotspots in the world, Sudan too. But what is absent is the lack of teeth, the lack of actual bite and power.
Absolutely, and I think you bring a very important point here. So broadly speaking, the Secretary General has the role in terms of managing the bureaucracy of the United Nations with over 40,000 staff at the moment. It is responsible to bringing many issues to the attention of the Security Council and performing many of the executive functions. I think your question is particularly important because it comes a lot in terms of what are some of the expectations between different groups of member states at this stage in terms of what can one expect and what do we expect it to be. And I think perhaps if we play a little bit of with words, we have many Western countries looking perhaps for much more of a secretary rather than a general, as someone that is able to manage the reforms and to lead the institution in a more impartial manner that is not necessarily a moral authority in that regard. And we have on the other side many global south countries that have been looking for that moral authority that is actually able to do that. Certainly the UN is in a very difficult position now. I find it to be at this stage, and particularly in terms of the expectations of endorsements of P5 members, permanent members of the UN, that they would accept some more activist type of individual. One of the reasons why Michelle Bachelet is at this stage very controversial, particularly in the United States and China. And I think to a large degree, what would be looking for the next couple of months is to identify who is the most acceptable candidate in terms of the P5 members in the larger constituency of the UN. And that's what, for me, makes Rebecca Grinspan a potential dark horse.
And we've made a note about that dark horse maybe being the favorite sometime in the new year. Appreciate your time, Gustavo de Carvalho. Talking about the UN, the race to lead the UN and replacing Antonio Guterres. Before we get to the news, make a note of this now. Top Billing brings you the very best in lifestyle, luxury and inspiration, from breathtaking homes and dream destinations to exclusive access to the people shaping culture and success. This is where style meets substance and every story shines. So tune in to the new season of Top Billing on S3 Thursdays at 7 p.m. starting from the 30th of April. It repeats on Tuesdays at 9:30 on SABC 1, and you can also stream Top Billing now live on SABC Plus. Top Billing, the best of the good life. Here's the news with Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, Lesotho denies allegations emanating from the Madlanga Commission, and Ramaphosa speaks on inequality on global scale. For SAFM News, I'm Ondela Mbanane. A very good afternoon. Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has denied requesting police dockets, including the one of the murder of Vereeniging engineer Amand Swart. This after suspended Sedibeng District Police Commissioner Mbangwangwashu testified before the Madlanga Commission that Gauteng Police Commissioner Tommy Mtombeni had directed him to collect all the dockets with warrants of arrest under Lesufi's order. The Premier spokesperson, Sizwe Pamla.
Premier Lesufi reaffirmed his respect for SAPS's independence and challenged Brigadier Nkwash to provide written proof to support allegations.
KwaZulu-Natal Premier Thami Ntuli has told relatives of 7 Newark family members who were kidnapped and murdered that his office will do all it can to ensure that the accused get harsh sentences. He visited the family of businessman Alan Monswami to convey condolences from himself as well as President Cyril Ramaphosa. Monswami, his wife and children, as well as 3 other relatives living with them, were kidnapped during a break-in on Tuesday night. Money was transferred out of their accounts after they were forced to give the banking pins before being killed. Nduli elaborates.
Our prayer is that the perpetrators must get a harsher sentence. They must rot in jail so that we'll know that we have eliminated them from within our society. Hence, we always make a call that our people in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, when they see some committing crime, they must report to the police before such damages are made. It's important that for those who are having illegal firearms are reported to the police.
A person has been killed and 2 others injured in a head-on collision between 2 sedans on N1 between Mokopane and Polokwane in Limpopo. The injured, both drivers, have been taken to hospital. Transport Department says the cause of the collision is still unknown. Motorists are advised to be cautious. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the decision to establish the International Panel on Inequality is one of the most consequential outcomes South Africa's G20 Leaders Summit held last year. The president has emphasized that the decision to establish the panel arose from an appreciation by world leaders that inequality severely constrains social and economic development. He was delivering a keynote address at a high-level event hosted by Wits University.
It is really astounding that between 2000 and 2024, the richest 1% of people in the world are said to have captured 41% of all new wealth. The poorer half of humanity captured just 1% of the new wealth that was created. The committee's report provided evidence that inequality is in the end a threat to democratic freedoms, to economic growth, and to general well-being of people.
Authorities in the Free State are urging motorists to exercise caution as rainy conditions are expected to persist throughout the long weekend. Disaster management officials warn that wet and slippery roads could increase the risk of road crashes and are appealing to drivers to slow down, keep their headlights on and remain vigilant. The head of the Provincial Disaster Management Centre is Marks Butler.
Well, I'm making use of this additional vacation to get some necessary rest, but due to the fact that it's raining and it's been going to rain for the whole weekend, we urge those commuters to take extra precaution on our roads because it's slippery. We do not want additional accidents because our resources are already overstretched.
Recapping the top story, Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has denied requesting police dockets, including the one for the murder of Vereeniging engineer Amand Swart. I'm Mondolambana for SFM News Headlines at 4:30.
In sports, the Sawa Simbini says SA Athletics in good space ahead of Classics and Stellenbosch take confidence into Pirates clash. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A very good afternoon. It is a long weekend, so we've got bigger volumes across the country, and also one of the real busy routes under quite a bit of pressure with rain and a crash. We're talking N1 North Pretoria through some heavy rain, big volumes today, and a crash going up to Rigel Avenue. That section of the N1 North really starting to backlog quite heavily from around about John Foster Drive. Motorists coming southbound also having a look at that, plus a breakdown at Rigel, so really heavy going north. north and some delays going southbound as well. Also, crash on the M1 near New Road, so the run into Joburg through Midrand is being held up. And again, you've just got a bit of onlooking heading north at that, so the busy N1 off the M1 slow from really Santon through to about New Road today. N1 south from Rivonia down through Winnie Mandela, that's heavy. The roadworks on the R21 north at Clayville causing a big delay as you line up passing the Tembisa area today. Let's get you an update between Cliffdale and Keir Edge. It's been a busy day today with one breakdown after the other. At this stage, it's still quite slow on the Pietermaritzburg bound carriageway, and a little bit of a slowdown on the big volume Durban bound side as well. Crash on the N2 south just after Getty Road if you're on your way to Spaghetti Junction, that's heavy. And the breakdown on the N2 north before Spaghetti Junction causing delays from the M7. And Cape Town, very busy today on the R43, the Hermanus route for the long weekend. That road is closed due to a fatal crash just south of the Claremont exit. So between Claremont and Fisherhaven, the R43 is closed, and there's been a crash on the alternative local route as well. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Still lots more to come. We'll talk later on about teen pregnancies being much more than just a health crisis, specifically in KZN. We'll also talk about the story of the citizen scientist fighting malaria, which is very important. And coming up in a moment, we will talk about the position from the SIU, which in many ways is quite dramatic in terms of their position, because they welcome a ruling to set aside the Mozambique wall tender. Before I get to all of that, a couple of things that are interesting. One is there's a tweet that I got, which I think is worth repeating, because I'm calling him Tunzi Jack Bagati, our citizen journalist here. He said, Ashraf, normally you ask listeners to send pics or videos of where they are, but in this case, too much rain yesterday in the Northern Cape. Parts of the, not N1, it's parts of, I'll get it right, it could be the N14, I think it is, right? Yeah. Parts of that, N14 flooded between Kuruman and Freiburg, and it could be a problem when it gets dark for drivers who aren't aware. So that's the one. The other one is very close to at the West Park Cemetery, Joburg, right? Between Mill Park, Amarensha, that area. A huge tree has fallen on the roads and smashed into a car. I don't think there's any injuries, which is remarkable considering the size of the tree, the weight, and the sheer force of it, and the car is gone. But the people have survived, thank goodness for that. But it means that road, Beyers-Naudé Road, at this point in time, has been closed. It may be open now, but it has been closed a while back. But that's the drama for the day. Right, let's talk about the other drama and the issue of the 85 million rand tender awarded to the ISF Shula joint venture.
Wherever you are in the world, SAFM 104 to 107 is accessible. We're also streaming live on Facebook, X, and YouTube at SAFM Radio. We acknowledge and appreciate everyone tuning in and watching our streams. Stay with SAFM 104 to 107 as we bring you commission live, breaking stories, and thought-provoking lectures. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So listen, what about reaction? Reaction from you on the race to the UN. Let's get that reaction from you on my conversation with Katie Katapodis about journalists under fire, as per the conversation about the killing of Amal Khalil in Lebanon, and also reaction that we've had earlier on from Action SA, as well as the African Transformation Movement regarding the changes made in terms of the police service by the president yesterday, right? So all of that reaction, you can call in live when we open the lines. If you're sending us a WhatsApp, you can do that now because we'll bank it. But the WhatsApps, please, they cannot be more than 30 seconds. We're going to find too many people are doing that, and we're going to cull them. That means we're not going to play them, unfortunately. And I don't want to miss out on getting your voice on air, but then you need to play your role as well. Right, let's talk about the drama here. The Special Investigating Unit welcomes the Special Tribunal's ruling that has set aside the 85 million rand tender awarded to the ISF Shula joint venture for the construction of a concrete barrier wall along the KwaZulu-Natal-Mozambique border. Let's find out more about that and what the implications are thereof with Selby Makoto, the spokesperson for the SIU. Selby, appreciate you joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you for having us on your show. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Tell me, why is this so significant?
This is so significant. It's a 2-year process. The legal proceedings in this regard to review and set aside the aforementioned contract actually commenced in March 2024. Just by way of a very brief background, around July 2016-2017, the community around Umkanyagude in the KwaZulu-Natal staged various protests as a result of the rampant crime that was taking place, smuggling of and trafficking of vehicles. Subsequently, the matter was escalated. Fast forward 2021, the proclamation was granted to the Special Investigating Unit. Going deeper into the investigation, we found various irregularities in relation to the rendering of this particular service. There is an 8-kilometer concrete barrier wall that was authorized by the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Transport, and only 5.29 kilometers of the 8 kilometers have been concluded, and an amount of 85 million rand was subsequently paid. It is common cause that the wall in question was not completed, and subsequently the department went further to issue another tender to the amount of 62 million rand to complete the project. These were irregularities that came to our attention. Hence, we went in and reviewed and set aside, made an application to the special tribunal, and an order in this regard was granted in our favor.
How did you find out about these irregularities?
These irregularities were actually raised initially by members of the public. Various allegations, they came through the whistleblower hotline. The SIU was made aware of the allegations and found that there was a need to go deeper through the legal provision empowered by the proclamation. We requested, we made a case study, got the proclamation, went into the record, subpoenaed the record, found that the bid evaluation that said at the time had not complied with the various statutory provisions. On the grounds of review, when we made the application, amongst others, we found that there were quite a number of irregularities, including the fraudulent submission of the compliance certificate, the letter of standing that was not in compliance with the regulatory provisions thereof, and ultimately the monies that were paid when the service in question had not been rendered to the meeting the requirement. So all these things, ultimately, we found that the monies that had been paid were not supposed to be paid, and as such, the order grants that within the next 30 days, certain actions must have been taken, including taking disciplinary action as part of consequence management against the officials who said, evaluated, and oversaw the process.
Oversaw, I understand, and delivered in terms of the completion of the actual work too, right?
Correct. Basically, what the department is saying is that 74.7% of the work has been done, so which leaves around 24.3%. That's calculated into 84 million rand. So what was of concern to us, even when we did the investigation, we found that this amount could not have been paid, in fact, because there were questionable circumstances in the first place relating to the awarding of the contract to this particular service provider. So based on that, the initial process in itself was flawed. And ultimately, when the money was paid, it even made matters more complicated because compliance requirements were not initially met.
Which does, I mean, maybe that's why, of course, the investigation is so important, but it also begs the question to say, if the problems that were uncovered later, how is it that this actual bid could have been accepted in the first place where there's no grey area? There were certain absolute criteria that were not met. Then I think I understand the issues of, the BE certificate being expired. They were unable to meet the a good standing letter. I mean, those things are the most basic things, and even that slipped through to be able to get the tender given out.
In our submission, especially the heads of argument, when we argued before the special tribunal, that is one of the outstanding things that we raised, to the effect that this process from the foundation was flawed, because some of these apparent irregularities could have been picked up, and the respondents, in this case, the ISF Shula joint venture, is not in a strong denial of what we are raising. Instead, in their heads of argument, they raised a very pertinent issue. That their accountant, they are even blaming their accountant, who unfortunately they did not satisfy the court or the special investigating unit with the affidavit in that regard. So we found their argument lacking, and when we presented our heads of argument, we argued that this was one of the critical requirements that were supposed to have been met. Hence, the application also went further to the effect that disciplinary actions ought to be taken against the officials who sat on the bid evaluation, bid adjudication process, because they awarded this despite the fact that there were these flagged irregularities.
What happens next?
What happens next is that in the next 30 days, we expect the department to have acted on the order instituting disciplinary action against the implicated officials, but also, as we seek to disgorge the funds, we expect the ISF to submit the audited financial statement indicating the income, the expenditure, as well as the proceeds as to how were the money spent.
Okay, and let's see what happens out of that. Selby Makgoto, thanks for your time, spokesperson for the Special Investigating Unit. And this is the story, 85 million in tender set aside. Just so many things wrong with that regarding the awarding of the ISF Shula joint venture for that construction of the KZN Mozambique border tender. Bizarre story once again. So many holes, if I can put that. So many holes in that wall, in that border wall. Right, let's talk about teen pregnancy right after this.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, we're going to get to some of your comments first up. And here's one about conflict zones.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Did you know that in these conflicts that are going on out there, there are so many tricks that are used to defeat the other party. Some soldiers, especially from Iran or from Gaza, they put on lenses in order to ambush IDF.
But have you got the
all those tricks?
Have you got the facts for that? Because you're saying some. I mean, if you come up with specifics, we can talk about it. Yeah. I wonder, do you have the facts for that? Right, here's one on the derby.
Mr. A, how are you doing, sir? For me, Chiefs must just do us a favor as the Buccaneers. Let us win the game 5-0 against them. And they must just go beat Sundowns for us. And the cup will be in Soweto. They will also benefit because they're from Soweto. Sundowns been winning it for years, man. So yeah, we need all hands on the deck. Great show, Mr. Ashraf. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. They are much appreciated. And yeah, they must just do us a favor. You think people do that? They do favors? By the way, on that issue of that previous caller regarding, journalists or soldiers masquerading as journalists. I mean, seriously, how many? Do you know many like that? I'm not saying it can never happen, but across the board, how many do you know like that? And do you have facts and figures, or is it just a story you've heard from others?
I don't think about the title, but read about the work and the journey of the current UNSG. When Antonio Guterres joined the UN, he started with Africa as one of the ground level officer. His desire to learn made him the SG. So some of the leaders are competing for the post I think they should focus more on the work, then the title will follow. Peter Rampatlela Mashit. Good afternoon.
Focus more on the work. Well, what is the work that they have to focus on? That's the point. How much powers do they have? We'll get further comments about Ramaphosa talking about poverty and inequality as well. But and later on, around World Malaria Day being commemorated, well, tomorrow, in fact. We'll talk about that too, right? But next up, teen pregnancies in KZN in particular. Let's talk about it.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi. Because where words fail, music speaks.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, by the way, if you're going to call in live anytime, do that. You can send us WhatsApp comments. Keep them up to 30 seconds, please. And you can also tweet, as many people are doing right away. Use that hashtag, the National Pulse, when you do that. And you can post on, SAFM Radio on Facebook. Just take SAFM Radio, or you'll see our live stream, and then maybe add your comments below that. In fact, that's the best way with Facebook. Check out the SAFM live stream, where you can actually visually see us in studio, and then just add your comments below that. I'll certainly make a point of trying to look out for that. Well, what about teen pregnancies? What about teen pregnancies in KZN? What about it being, the claim is that it's more than a health crisis? With me is Adeshni Naika, who's the Childline KZN director. Adeshni, I appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. So when we say, teen pregnancy is more than a health crisis, what sort of crisis then are we talking about?
It's definitely more than a health issue for these young girls. For one, behind every statistic of a young pregnant girl, their entire life is changed. It's a social issue that affects their education, their safety, mental health, and long-term opportunities. It also tells us that children are entering adulthood way before they are emotionally or physically ready.
Far too early. So let's then look at KZN province specifically. Give me the data. What do the numbers say?
I did not look up the exact numbers because it's something that we go through all the time, but I can tell you that there is growth. The numbers are not declining. It is, if anything, it's increasing. And this is very disturbing to organizations like ourselves, as well as, I would say, perhaps Department of Health, because we are always having programs in communities, in schools, highlighting the issue behind teenage pregnancy.
Okay, you don't have the numbers, I understand, but let's say anecdotally, in terms of what you know, right? Typically, say in a typical school in KZN, how many teenage pregnancies then emerge from that school, say, on an annual basis? And I know it's anecdotal. Just what would you suspect?
I would say at least 5 to 7 a year.
Yeah, that means like per school, right?
Yes, per school.
Sure. What do we understand by the causes of it? Like what's triggered that?
These stats also highlight the gaps in the system. They show us that many young people are not receiving adequate information, the support or even supervision to make informed choices. Unfortunately, we live in an era where both parents have to work. Children way younger than actual, 16, 17, are left to their own devices after school. There's no actual supervision. And this also now reflects into deeper issues like poverty and the lack of access to youth-friendly services. And in many cases, it is comes from exposure to abuse or even coercion. So really, it's not just about behavior, it's about the environment, and the systems that we follow, should I say.
And then what is the legal status of a teenage pregnancy, whether the girl in this case falls pregnant by a male in school, which would be a similar age, or a male outside of school, which would be someone a few years older?
Look, within the same age group, there is no statutory intervention that can be done. But with the age gap of, if I recall correctly, it's 5 years older, it is considered statutory rape.
And that hasn't stopped this happening, assuming that many of these, and again, I'm assuming many of these girls are fall pregnant by men who are much older than them. Yeah?
Yes, it's actually very, very often. And it also comes from grooming. It stems from grooming. It happens over a period of time. Unfortunately, a lot of families do not want to report the case as well. I had an incident very, very close to home recently. In fact, the baby was actually born last week. And the first thing I said when I heard about it was, you've got to go to the police. And no, it didn't happen. They're afraid of stigmatization. And then what happens is the boy's family pays off the family. So it also kind of, there's this income coming in. Let me take the money. But what happens is these families don't realize that long term, that 5,000 and 6,000 is not going to last forever. Babies are expensive.
I mean, their point about stigma, is it understandable?
Yes, I would say it's understandable, especially when the child is that young, maybe a little bit older. It is more a cultural issue, but as young as 12 and 13, it's definitely a stigmatization issue as well, especially when the boy then disappears.
Now, the other point, you talk about statutory rape because of the age gap, but in essence, and again I'm making an assumption, in essence, whatever the types of coercion that may take place, there's a sense that at that time the young girl is, and I'm going to use the words very carefully in inverted commas, like a willing participant, even if she doesn't understand the greater ramifications of it all, right? What does that say about the type of narrative and information he's receiving on a day-to-day basis from, whether it's on radio or television or social media, that shapes it as an acceptable exercise to engage in?
Yes, you're absolutely true. So what happens is these children believe, watching social media, TV, they believe that it's the norm. And that is the environment that they are exposed to. That is the environment that is the type of, cultural backgrounds that they are surrounded by, that it is acceptable. And most of it is a myth, and children need to be taught that it is not acceptable. It is not acceptable. It is not acceptable for your, very much like rape, for your uncle or your brother to be touching you. As much as we create and these programs for the children, it just does not seem to be working. So obviously we need to relook at the way we are doing things, and not just us, everybody involved. I mean, that's childline.
So just to end with then, in 30 seconds, what for you would be the one most decisive intervention that has to be activated, considering we've probably spoken about this issue for 10, 15 years already?
Interventions have to be practical and it has to be coordinated. In schools, we need to relook at how we are doing life orientation and sexuality education. It has to really go beyond theory, and it has to speak to real life situations that children are going through. It has to be real. It can't be once off. You can't go into a school just once and go there 2 years later. It has to be, you have to be on it all the time.
Yeah, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. Adeshni Naika, the KZN Director for Childline. And this conversation, if we did a copy and paste of a similar one 10 years ago, I promise you we'd be raising the same issues, vast numbers. As Kadeshni says, Adeshni saying 6-7 young girls in a school, per school, over many schools in KZN pregnant. Sure. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headline, Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has commended South African efforts in spotlighting inequality as a global emergency. Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has denied requesting police dockets, including the one for the murder of Vereeniging engineer Amand Swart. And cloudy and cold conditions are expected across Gauteng, with showers and thunderstorms possible in most areas. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hose.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Okay, let's talk sport as always, to me, and it's a case of fastest out of the blocks, isn't it?
Literally, as he prepares for one of the biggest moments of his career, not as a sprinter, but as a race organizer, Agani Simbini believes that athletics in South Africa is in a good space. Speaking to SABC Sport, Simbini says that the country has a talented group of young athletes ready to carry the baton forward when he eventually retires.
Hey man, I think the sport is already in good hands, man. I think we have a good group of athletes that are coming through, but at the same time, the athletes are hungry to perform, and the athletes believe that they can be international stars. You know, back in the day, the guys didn't believe it. You know, they'd get onto the stage and get shocked by seeing guys that they watch on TV. You know, and now the young guys just don't care. You know, and they go out there, they race, they beat the guys, and that's really great for them because it builds belief. But I think the sport is healthy. We just need, as athletes, to come together and grow the sport more. Do things like this. Do and come up with ideas where there's gaps you see in the sport. Close that gap. I might not see a gap that you see, but close that gap. That's how we grow the sport all together. It's not just about me doing it. It's about each and every one of us doing something where we come from.
In football, Stellenbosch coach Gavin Hunt says that his side will be brimming with confidence after holding champions Mamelodi Sundowns to a 1-0 draw in midweek, and now aim to inflict pain on title rivals Orlando Pirates. The Maroons host Pirates at Athlone Stadium on the 5th of May, with Hunt insisting the point earned in Pretoria was a massive boost for his 9th-placed team. Hunt, who joined Stellenbosch at the turn of the year after leaving Durban City, says that his first job was to secure safety, but now the club can start looking up the table. And talking about Orlando Pirates, Andre de Jong has praised the character within the Pirates dressing room after spending the past 3 months settling in at the Soweto Giants. The Buccaneers host bitter rivals Kaizer Chiefs on Sunday, chasing crucial points in their Betway Premiership title race, with Sundowns and aiming to complete a league double over Amakosi.
I think obviously we've got a very experienced dressing room, a lot of young players as well, a lot of vibrant sort of faces and energy in the dressing room, which has been really nice to be involved in this back half of the season. Obviously joining in January, now I'm starting to get the dynamic of the dressing room, who the sort of the senior players and the voices who obviously speak up in the tougher times or keep everyone going in the good times. But I think we're on a really good run of form at the moment, really positive from everyone at the moment. So I think when you're winning games and winning games convincingly, it's really easy to be positive. So we go into this derby with a lot of confidence under our belt, and I think we're a team who can handle the big pressure moments quite well, and hopefully we can do that again on Sunday.
In chess, Deputy Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Peace Mabe, has confirmed that the department will fund South African chess players who have qualified for the 2026 Commonwealth Chess Championships in Sri Lanka next month. The ministry has committed over 4.1 million rand to support 88 athletes to ensure that they participate at the international event. Mabe says that the government stepped in after recognizing that many families could not afford traveling costs for athletes and wanted to give them a final relief.
Upon ourselves to further investigate, to get to understand who is representing South Africa. And we realized that the need was dire, and that parents really wanted their children to go participate, and that they had made other means, to make sure that their children will then represent South Africa, not themselves, not their schools, but to represent South Africa. We then sat around the table and we looked at the parents that have went to Abu Mashonisa made loans for their children to can participate. And we decided it was through this small voice that made everybody to benefit. So hence we came to a conclusion that will carry everyone who's going to be representing South Africa.
You know what I like about this, Ashraf, is the fact that now money is starting to open up for, in inverted commas, smaller sports, because obviously a lot of people wouldn't view chess as a big sport in the country, but now for the department to actually say we're willing to pay for all the athletes going to the Commonwealth Games, it just says that they don't only see the big sports, cricket, rugby and football, but gone are those days where you feel like your child is just playing a minor sport and no one is actually caring.
Well, I mean,
in terms
bottom
of the
line,
money.
if it's a sport,
it's a sport,
then the department has to make a move. I mean,
yeah,
they need to support it in proportion, obviously, compared to say rugby or soccer. Or
it's
whatever.
not going to be the same,
but it has to be. They would have to support it.
Absolutely. That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a bit of a tricky situation around Gauteng at the moment. It's a wet day and it's a Friday driving into a long weekend. So rain, wet roads and big volumes. Plenty of crashes across Joburg. One on the R24 approaching the airport. That's heavy. Another on the N3 North going into Galuli. So big traffic coming through from Germiston. A crash on the M1 North at Buccleuch just after Rivonia Road. So backlogging going on there as well. And a crash in the rain on Jan Smuts Avenue northbound at 6 Road. Rosebank through Dunkeld after Hyde Park being held up. And then lots of breakdowns. One on the M1 South before Winnie Mandela. That's heavy. A couple on the N3 South at Edenvale. Another at Germiston. So the N3 Limbo Park right through to Elands is pretty heavily backed up as well. Big traffic around the Southgate Diepkloof area, particularly the N12 moving through towards Diepkloof, and very heavy queues down on the N12 heading out through the Protea Glen exit. N14 to Krugersdorp Pinehaven is heavy. Big volume on the N1 North as well. Traffic under pressure really from John Foster right through until about Storham Full Road. There's some really big volume heading out to Polokwane. Talking of Polokwane, crashes in the central Mokopane area. That's a bad one on the N1. And then another one between Mokopane and the Ranch. So some big traffic out that side as well today around those scenes. Across into Durban, the N2 going north into Spaghetti Junction, still being held up by a breakdown. There's a crash on the N2 South after Umgeda Road, so that's heavy as you come into that one as well. Bit of traffic pressure. Key Ridge through to Cliffdale on your way out to Pietermaritzburg today. And Cape Town, one of the key routes on a long weekend, the run into Hermanus. That road is closed from Kleinmont down to sort of Fisherhaven, Horston area due to a fatal crash. Motorists diverting onto an alternative route from Bot Revere side. That also has a crash, so there's some very heavy delays going on that side. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
Moro, Moni, Dumela, Bonjour, Habari. You arrived in South Africa to build something better. New place, new challenges, new responsibilities. Now you can with the Mama Money bank account. Sign up easily using any passport or asylum document. Get paid into your own account, up to 100,000 a month. You can send money home from wherever you are because this is more than money. It's progress. Buy your Mama Money card today at Pick n Pay or a Mama Money agent. Mama Money, now you can.
Attention all shoppers.
Our supermarket shelves are full of unhealthy food. It's often hard for me to know which foods are good for my family. The information on packaged food is complicated and hard to understand. I wish we had easy-to-understand warning labels on foods high in salt, sugar, and saturated fat. We have the right to know what's in our food. Support front-of-package warning labels on unhealthy packaged foods. Sign the petition on healer.org. That's HEALA.org.
The soundtrack of your life with Ernest Pillay.
They were more than just songs. They were the backdrop to your best days and the ones that change everything. The soundtrack of your life with me, Ernest Pillay, brings you iconic classics and hidden gems that spoke to your heart then and still do now. Whether you're driving, relaxing, or just remembering, let the music take you right back. The soundtrack of your life with Ernest Pillay. It's about your past, your story, and it's all right here on your favorite station, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 p.m.
This is SAFM.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, lots happening in South Africa and around the world with regard to the markets. With all those numbers, here's Paswane Mpatlele.
Afternoon, National Fan, to all your listeners. Well, we got reports from China that the foreign direct investment for Q1 was down 7.3%, still trending downwards. However, what's brewing below those numbers is the new inflow of money going out of the traditional manufacturing export businesses towards the high value chain in tech, as new foreign businesses are up 11%, targeting the AI space. Global equities volatility is declining on developments that Iran foreign minister is heading to Pakistan, which can create a renewal for the second round of peace talks. This development has been considered cautiously positive, especially with the naval ship buildup still in play, and this is the likes of yields and dollar momentum from breakout even go to higher, along with oil prices that were lower, were down 1.5% at $105 an ounce. Gold got a breather back above 4,700 at $4,730, up 0.7, and platinum also above a key level of 2,000 at $2,020 an ounce, up 0.2. Bitcoin holds bullish in its current range at 78,000, and this inflationary environment continues to see investors play defensive stocks, especially the growth revenue building stocks that can hold up in inflationary environments. US indices are up 0.6, along with S&P up 0.2, as the DOJ in the US Department of Justice has sorted not to put charges against Powell and put it off. This opening way for the new chair to come into play, which is considered to be more of a dovish than a hawkish. Europe indices are down 0.5%. JSE is holding up 0.5 as gains from resource sector rebound 1.4%. Industrials up 0.5, while financials are down 0.3%. On the currency space, the rand against the dollar is at 16.54, and against the euro 19.35, and rand against the pound 22.33.
We got all of those. Thanks for that, Paswane. Have a great weekend, and we'll connect with you and the team, Makwe and all, on Monday.
Yes.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, we're going to talk about malaria, because tomorrow is World Malaria Day. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Here's some reaction from you.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and listeners. I've heard you just earlier on saying the killing of this journalist lady, Amal Khalil, should be condemned in the strongest way. But Ashraf, the Israel and all other superpowers have been condemned for killing journalists and all the civilians in the world, but they've never stopped doing that. I've seen it happened. Many journalists have been killed by now. Even countries that I think they will talk, but they are not saying anything. It's so sad for this lady, man. Killed so bad in the southern Lebanon there. But it's one of those things, Ashraf. It's Maruma in my king. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Maruma. Well, according to Katie, it's not one of those things. And even if maybe you and I can't do much about it, it has to be condemned. This was very targeted. And there's multiple reports that for 7 hours there was a complete corridor, a blockade that refused to allow any aid to her because she was alive, injured and alive, and then died, right? What about the power of the journalist?
Ashraf, they claim that journalists and ambulances are used to cover up armed combatants against IDF and Israel illegal occupation, which is committing genocide in Gaza, is false, and there is extreme propaganda of Israel's Zionist government that is using it to commit more massacres and killing of innocent people. Thank you.
Well, look, I hear what you're saying. That's why I'm saying come with the facts. There's a lot that can be, just spun over and people just say, well, I heard. But what did you hear? What are the facts and figures around it? Okay, Pasika in Pretoria, hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
how are you?
Good talking to you. Thank you.
I forgot you can speak closer.
Oh, well, maybe I can try. You never know. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, on this appointment of the acting national commissioner.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's disappointing to listen to MPs when they speak like that. They remind me of my time when I was in varsity in SASCO, where we used to say, it's not going to be possible to take the one who's loudest to student parliament just because you make a lot of noise, but in terms of the content, you've got nothing. And at times it reminds me that when I listen to an MP speaking. One, you've got very clear things. I think I'm just going to mention 6 that I remember that the National Commissioner is supposed to do, or even the acting. One of them is overall leadership of the SAPS and operational management. And operational management requires also your coordination of specialized units. And you've got deputy national commissioners that are working under you. You've got administration and governance, which involves budget and resource allocation of the SAPS. And you've got accountability and reporting, and you've got the public safety and national security. The other one is leadership of provincial commissioners, which at some point is you are overseeing. Require you. When you hear someone speaking about experience, corps, and all that, you are speaking of management role. And this the Lieutenant General has been in the SAPS since 2007 when she was appointed 2007 as a superintendent or a colonel. She doesn't have a lot of experience. Now, when you speak of these things and you are just like, how are we having people who make policies who seem like they don't make research before they come and speak on a public radio where we're supposed to be gaining trust that leadership is talking, and you are listening to leadership and you are like, this is not leadership talking, you don't know what to call.
But here's the point, basically, on what you're saying. Sometimes they don't know. You're quite right. We often chat to them and you realize they don't know. But when they come across as they don't know, 1, of course, it means they fall short. 2, they disappoint you. But 3, very importantly, they convince you not to get their vote, if you get my point. Because in their own way, they convince you that, hey, the person cannot be representing me. So we just ask the questions, and then you can interpret it the way you like after that, as you've clearly done. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Point made. Paseka, thank you for that. Much appreciate your time here. Right. Okay, we have, in fact, there's a few more comments, but we're going to talk about other things like World Malaria Day coming up next.
Spar Winner Car is back. Stand a chance to win one of 50 Hyundai Extras when you buy participating products. Like 1 kg stock country spread tub for $46.99. Save 10 Rand or 80-gram Cadbury chocolate slabs, excluding bubbly. Buy any 2 for 36. Save 14 Rand. Price is valid from 22 April till 10 May. Shop, swipe, and win while stocks last. Only at Spar. T's and C's apply.
2 great national teams return to the battlefield. Proteas women are ready to triple their efforts. Meanwhile, women in blue believe they have the correct ingredients to win. This is the 4th T20 International. Catch South Africa versus India on Saturday, 25 April at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC3 with reports on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Mavis, I wonder if I should sell my car. I'm not sure where to go.
Wanna sell your car, but don't know what to do. You don't have to go far, we come to you. If you're rolling under 1.5 or a Lacquer 2.2, doesn't matter what you drive, we buy cars once you.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, tomorrow is World Malaria Day, and it may be, it's an issue we hear about, and sometimes we understand the full impact of malaria, and sometimes many of us, in fact, forget about it. So let's talk about what happens this time around awareness for World Malaria Day on the 25th of April. With me, Dr. Taneshka Kruger, Project Manager at the Institute for Sustainable Malaria Control at the University of Pretoria. I understand, Dr. Kruger, you are busy on a project, I would suspect, malaria-related in Mozambique.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. That's not totally correct. I am currently in Mozambique, but it's for something totally different. We were invited by Goodbye Malaria to attend the launch of their Musashwa grant renewal in Maputo, which took place on Wednesday late afternoon. And this marks the next phase of a critical cross-border malaria program between Mozambique, South Africa, and Eswatini. So it just reinforces the idea that malaria elimination in the region depends on coordinated action across borders. And what we also then did is we had a very high level global malaria convening yesterday, discussing some of the challenges, the gaps, why are we still struggling to achieve elimination, and what is needed from everybody that's involved in malaria. So it was a very fruitful and high-paced discussion yesterday about what is needed and how we're going to get to elimination in the Musashwa region specifically.
Okay. Let's start maybe with the obvious that often doesn't get asked because we just take it for granted. When we talk about malaria, why is malaria an issue?
Why is malaria an issue? Because it kills people, and if people don't get treated as fast as possible, it's a killer disease. So people die because of this disease. And the problem is people living in endemic areas, they are aware of the disease. They know what to do when they start getting symptoms. But people who don't live there, they actually forget about the disease. They get sick. They don't go for treatment. Or when they do go for treatment, they forget that they might have malaria. And it's therefore critical for us to constantly raise awareness about the disease, no matter where, endemic, non-endemic provinces, to ensure that people go for testing, go for treatment as soon as possible to prevent people from dying.
And therefore, give me a broad sense of the risks of malaria in, let's take the entire SADC region, South Africa and the other countries too.
Okay, so in South Africa, malaria is still found in northeastern Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and KwaZulu-Natal, with case numbers currently since January to up to now, currently higher since the start of the year in comparison to 2025, same time period. Now, across SADC, the malaria situation is quite mixed. We see in countries like Mozambique and Zambia that they still have high ongoing transmission, where Mozambique, for example, since the start of 2026, has seen a 55% increase in cases. I think it's something like 1.3 million cases that they've actually reported already. And in countries, Namibia, and Zimbabwe, which are more, closer to elimination, they have seen some recent outbreaks and increases in cases, which is, of course, due to various reasons. Now, it's mainly heavy rains and flooding which create ideal breeding conditions for mosquitoes, along with people moving across borders this time of the year, that we see these increases. So it's not something new. It does happen around about this time of year. So even our lower risk countries remain vulnerable. And that is why it's important to continuously spread awareness, because the key message is that malaria in this region is highly interconnected, but we can achieve elimination by cross-border collaboration, by working together, because mosquitoes don't respect borders.
Okay. And you talk about awareness. I mean, do I take it that there is sufficient awareness and people know what to do, or there is an awareness and people disregard what to do anyway?
You know what? I think there's a lot of awareness going on, a lot of people communicating on various levels. Like I said already, we need to look at both endemic and non-endemic provinces, but we can always do more. We can always share the information more. We need to keep the message going, keep telling people, be aware of malaria, take precaution, protect yourselves, etc. Because we cannot overemphasize the importance of spreading the information. So yes, awareness creation is happening, but we can do more. We definitely can do more. Each and every person must talk about this disease.
Okay.
And you're right. I think what happens in a lot of cases is people become complacent. It's just another disease. We know about it, or we don't know about it, but we know what to do. But when it actually happens, when push comes to shove, they might forget, I was in a malaria area. They need to be made aware constantly. Protect yourself. Go for treatment as soon as possible.
Okay, talking about awareness, tell me about the Citizen Scientist Project.
Okay, so the Citizen Scientist Project is actually, I won't call it a project, it's something that we've been working on for a couple of years. So basically what citizen scientists are, or what they do, they're everyday community members who actively contribute to scientific research, for example, by assisting in the collecting of data, and they help translate scientific knowledge into practical action within their community. Now, some of the work we've done in the Vhembe district in Limpopo province, we've actually seen how powerful community involvement can be. So what we started doing back in 2003, it might even have been earlier than that, we started working with local women and trained them to collect data through surveys. Now, around about 2010, we trained a larger group of these women to do the same for a very specific project. And since then, some of those ladies have undergone some basic laboratory training. We actually have a lady who assists with mosquito and larvae collection. She loves it. She calls herself an entomologist, and it's just very basic training just to let them help us collect our data. But what is important is these women speak the language, they know the culture, they know their community, and they can make research easier for us, the researchers, by ensuring that the people understand what the research is about and how it will help us help communities against malaria.
And does that work? I mean, these citizens you refer to who are able to be your eyes and ears.
Yeah, they really do. We've had cases where some of the community members will contact them directly and say, we're seeing more cases or we're seeing more mosquitoes. Send the researchers, they must come help. And then those ladies let us know, listen here, people are reporting more. So we either, reach out to the clinics or to the local control programs and say, listen here, guys, what's happening? The people are saying they're seeing more mosquitoes. Are there concerns? Are you having challenges? And that way we contribute directly to the control program by keeping them aware if we have heard about any instances of challenges, etc.
Let me end by giving you a challenge, but in fact it's to assist, right? For you to assist. You have a national audience listening to us right now. What is the one message you can give them that they can then pass on to others who are, oblivious to the dangers of malaria?
Okay, that's an easy one. Malaria exists. Malaria kills. It's found in South Africa. If you have been to a malaria endemic area and roughly 10 to 14 days afterwards you see symptoms or you recognize symptoms that might be flu-like, go to your doctor, request a malaria test. Do it as soon as possible, because the sooner you do it, the faster you can get treatment, and you can then survive, basically. If you live in an endemic area, if you have the symptoms, go get tested immediately. So basically, my takeaway message is get tested as fast as possible, get treated as fast as possible, and spread that message. Malaria exists. It is a killer.
Okay, time does matter, bottom line to that. Dr. Taneshka Kruger, thanks for your time. Project Manager at the Institute for Sustainable Malaria Control based at the University of Pretoria. And tomorrow is World Malaria Day. Now, did you get the message?
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right before we get to the news, there's comments from you.
Good day, Ashraf and the SFM listeners. So as a teacher, what I've witnessed when it comes to pregnancy of teenagers and children is that one, these kids, they're experimenting amongst themselves. Two, parents coerce, encourage them, especially the girl child, to have relations with these older males because these older males give them money and buy groceries. Three, we have older males who are just grooming these girls because these girls, they don't know better because they're in that adolescent stage. So they notice boys and stuff like that. So to curb this, men must reprimand men. And parents must have the talk with their girl children and their boy children to let them know that the changes in their body is natural. Doesn't mean they have to act on it. It's just the body telling them that they're on the right side. Thank you.
Well, there we are. Thank you for that contribution. Right, let's get to the news now. It's 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. UN chief praises South Africa and a weather warning for Gauteng. Good day to you. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has commended South Africa's efforts in spotlighting inequality as a global emergency. He was delivering a virtual address at the establishment of the International Panel on Equality by the President Cyril Ramaphosa at Wits University in Johannesburg today.
But But let's be clear, inequality is not only about income or wealth, it's about power, who holds it, who is denied it, and how it shapes every chance in life. We face a world in which billions lack the basics, while a few reap extraordinary gains. A world where unfair global rules trap countries into patterns of vulnerability and dependence. A world where unequal outcomes today lock in unequal opportunities tomorrow, in education, in healthcare, in every aspect of life. And the emerging technologies are accelerating the divide.
Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi denied requesting police dockets, including the one for the murder of Vereniging engineer Armand Swart. He's described testimony by the suspended Sedibeng District Police Commissioner at the Matlanga Commission as misleading. Mbango Nkwashu testified that the Gauteng Police Commissioner, Tommy Ntombeni, directed him to collect all the dockets with warrants of arrest. According to Nkwashu, the original order came from Lesufi. The Premier spokesperson, Sizwe Pamla.
Premier Lesufi reaffirmed his respect for SAPS's independence and challenged Brigadier Nkwashu to provide written proof to support his allegations. He stated that he only receives routine crime prevention briefings like the Eyes and Ears program from the SAPS, but is not involved in operational matters.
The Eastern Cape Premier, Oscar Mabuyani's formally launched legal proceedings against the EFF leader Julius Malema in the High Court. This follows his allegation that Mabuyani fraudulently obtained his master's degree from Fort Hare University. The application is seeking orders to declare the allegations false and defamatory. The Premier's spokesperson is Sonwabo Mbananga.
No individual, regardless of political standing, has the right to make reckless allegations and present them as fact without consequence. The Premier remains committed to the rule of law and believes the courts are the appropriate platform to resolve this matter. This action is not about politics. It is about protecting the truth, upholding dignity, and defending constitutional rights. The Premier will not allow his name or office to be used as a target for misinformation and defamatory attacks.
The Palapala farm theft case has been adjourned to next month in the Modemole Regional Court in Limpopo. The court ruled that the three accused have cases to answer on the theft of more than $500,000 from President Ramaphosa's farm in 2020. The matter will be back in court on the 25th of May. Advocate Kwena Matlala.
Upon consulting, we realized that we're not ready to proceed now. We still need to sit down and consider some of the evidence that was led and also to prepare further on the whether the accused is going to take a stand or not as a court basis.
Cloudy and cold conditions are expected across Gauteng, with showers and thunderstorms possible in most areas. The Weather Service has issued a warning for severe storms with heavy downpours likely over parts of Johannesburg and surrounding western areas, raising the risk of localized flooding. Weather forecaster Lehlohonola Tabela.
If you'll be over the southwestern parts of Gauteng, expect a 60% chance of showers and thunder showers, which also includes the western parts of Johannesburg. A yellow level 2 warning for severe thunderstorms has been issued by the South African Weather Service, expected to result in heavy downpours that may lead to localized flooding for most parts of the western areas of Johannesburg into the western area of the whole province, covering most parts of Vereeniging all the way into Soweto.
Top story, the UN Secretary-General has commended South Africa's efforts in highlighting inequality as a global emergency. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
In sports, the Sawa Soweto derby takes centre stage this weekend. Sharks look to honour Kolisi milestone and clash against Edinburgh and Turkey to return to F1 calendar in 2027. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very busy Friday afternoon as we drive into a long weekend. Some long-distance delays, one between Mokopane and the Ranch. 2 crash scenes on your way up to Polokwane. We've got an average speed of about 22 kilometres on that section. It's 22 kilometres an hour and a queue time of about 45 minutes to get through. So gives you an idea of the volume that we're dealing with. Also down in the Eastern Cape, there's a big crash on the N10 involving a couple of trucks, one of them overturning on the main carriageway. N10 just south of Craddock, so Craddock through to Cookhouse, there'll be some delays there. Pretoria absolutely jam-packed and solid on the N1 from John Foster right through until about Montana, up to about Sefaka Makato before you're out of that. That's going north. Also some big traffic heading out along the N4 into the construction as you make your way from Solomon Mishlangu down towards the Cullinan exit. Crash on the M1 south at New Road causing some delays. Crash on the N3 north at Galulis causing a big backlog coming through from Elands, and a crash on the N3 south at Elands causing a delay really that extends right back into the Limbro Park area. So really heavy both sides of the N3. The Mike 1 coming out of Joburg today from Melrose up through Southampton Woodmead and onto the M1 north, very heavy as well. Durban breakdowns between Komashu and Gateway, heavy traffic both ways there. Crash on the N2 south just after Umgeni Road down by Clare Road Bridge. That's the reason for the queue back as far as Queen Nundy Drive. Also breakdown after that. And the N2 north has the broken down vehicle before Spaghetti Junction, so big traffic as you come up from the M7 Bluff exit. Key Ridge Cliffdale busy but easing on your way out to Pietermaritzburg. And Cape Town today heavy, particularly the N1 outbound to Brackenfell, the N2 outbound through Khayelitsha, R300 down to Mitchell's Plain from Delft is bad, and there's a fatal crash closing the R43, the busy Hermanus route just south of the Claymont exit. Motorists diverted to a very busy local alternative. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Some people sending pictures of that road being closed at Beyersnodier Road, just where the West Park Cemetery is in Johannesburg, right? Melville area near the Wits University football grounds, if you know that Emmarantia area well. Dramatic, really, that entire tree, a huge tree, collapsing, but across the road and smash into the roof of the car. And the story is there are no serious injuries, which, knowing the size of the trees and the weight, is quite remarkable. Right, you know we don't have the fireside chat any longer, which means on a Friday it's not one profile interview, but as per the norm, whatever it is are the biggest issues that moves the national pulse, and those are the stories that we cover. So still to talk about that, we'll talk about the IEC and their stakeholder relations or engagement programs with regard to the elections and voter education coming up. But before that, we'll chat to the spokesperson for the Office of the Premier in the Eastern Cape. And it's all about the Premier and Julius Malema right after this.
This Freedom Month, we reflect, we remember, and we celebrate how far we've come. 30 years into democracy, South Africa continues to shape a future grounded in justice, equality, and opportunity for all. Under the theme, Freedom and the Rule of Law. 30 years of democratic citizenship. SAFM will bring you all things freedom, the voices, the stories, and the conversations that matter. Join us as we honor the journey and explore what freedom means today. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, so let's talk about this. It's been quite dramatic. You know that, a few days ago, last week, in fact, when we had this issue of Julius Malema being sentenced, around that time he addressed people in the Kugompo city, and he made statements which have been described as, defamatory. And there's been a response, defamatory against the Eastern Cape Premier, Oscar Mabuyane. A lot of that around the issue of his qualifications and whether they've been fake or fraudulent. Now, the Eastern Cape Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, has taken legal action against Julius Malema. And as a result of that, we'll find out exactly what their plans are. What action has been taken. Let's find out more. Sonwabo Imbananga is the spokesperson for the Office of the Premier in the Eastern Cape. Appreciate your time, Sonwabo. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to your listeners.
Right. I mean, politicians make comments every other day on air, in public platforms. Why the need to respond to Malema's comments about the Premier via the legal route?
Because in of themselves, these repeated untruths have an impact on the Premier, not only in his capacity as the Premier of the Eastern Cape Province, where naturally the trust of the public that you are serving is sacrosanct. But also as a citizen of the country, he has rights. He has rights for his dignity to be protected and preserved. He has the right not to be injured in terms of his reputation, which in this case it has been, and Mr. Malema has done so repeatedly. And this is merely to further the insistence that we want and say that these are defamatory, these are wrong, and these have injured the reputation of the Premier, and we seek remedies in this regard.
Okay, let's talk about the allegations and some of the specific responses from the Premier side. A lot of that is going to do with issues of fit for governance, for qualifications. Tell me about it.
Look, there's nothing that is a mystery around what the Premier is contesting and is currently also before the courts regarding the issue specifically about his deregistration from Forte University and the unfairness that he is raising in respect of this. The Premier is saying and has said previously that he has never held a master's degree from Forte University or anywhere else for that matter. That indeed the Premier, like any other citizen in the Republic of South Africa who qualifies, he applied for recognition of prior learning, knowing fully well he did not meet the requirements to enter the master's program, but that there were provisions within the university to accommodate such recognition of prior learning, and thus the Premier was indeed registered, along with another cohort of his peers, by the way, who mysteriously were not deregistered, but the Premier was indeed deregistered and is contesting the fairness, or rather the unfairness of this decision. And these are the matters, without really wanting to go into the granular detail, which will be ventilated in court. But indeed, coming back to the issue at hand, the Premier does insist that the remarks of Mr. Malema have definitely contributed to the continued perception of malfeasance or wrongdoing or corruption against him as a person. And the Premier rejects these assertions and wants to test the validity of the assertions that Mr. Malema made in court by saying that he indeed must be held accountable for the damage to the reputation that has been caused.
So in taking him to court, Malema, that is, what would he be actually charged with?
Well, we're seeking remedies insofar as the defamatory remarks which have been made publicly, repeatedly, and in the statement that we've issued, for an example, we cite that we also will be seeking the instruction to desist from making further statements or allegations of this nature again, and that there should be a definitive finding by a court of law of the wrongness of these of repeating these untruths and false and disparaging accusations against the Premier.
Okay, we've reached out to the EFF to respond as well. They haven't quite done so right now, or even Julius Malema, for that matter. Having said that, have you had any response from them at all?
Well, it is not for us to engage at a personal or organization level. Right, a citizen have been injured, and that citizen is merely exercising his right to protection. So there's no need to engage outside of the legal framework of the country to engage the affected parties otherwise.
I understand. Okay, let's leave it at that, and let's see how that plays out as well, and whether in fact the EFF does respond, and if so, in what form will they do so. So thank you very much for your time there, and of course central to that is this issue of comments made by Julius Malema against the Eastern Cape Premier, and slurs around his standing in terms of his academic status. Believe that or not.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, we're going to talk in a moment about the IEC's program in the KZN region, and it's really an education program in terms of creating awareness. All something we've touched on before, all about ensuring that more and more people know exactly what the plan is regarding elections and their voting, their power to vote. Right.
Hey, Ashraf. Today I'm calling on behalf of the citizens of the community of Timbaza, Ashraf, plagued by cable thefts and power blackouts and no response from the Buffalo City municipality. Here in King Williamstown, particularly in Timbaza, it's been 3 or 4 days now, no power, no response, nothing, no message. If they fix those cables, they steal the cables and they fix them. They come back and they do it all over again. Nothing happens in between. I just wish someone from the Buffalo City municipality can come and explain why are they against cable theft. Yes, particularly in Timbaza. What is their plan? What are they doing? Do they even care? I'm Soviet and Buffalo City municipality.
Thanks for that, Soviet. I'll tell you what, the issue of cable theft is not just even a Buffalo City problem, it's a nationwide problem. I mean, you can tell me from whichever suburb or township that you live in or city, have you had cable theft issues in your area or not, let's say in the last year, and how many? And I think you'll be quite surprised, in fact.
Hey, how are you, Ashraf? Yeah, I'm speaking to Simon in KwaZulu-Natal, man. Yeah, I think we're going to beat the Chiefs 5-0. And they must beat Sundowns 2-0. Then we can take the cup, man.
Okay. That sounds like you've got it all worked out.
Ashraf, they claim that journalists and ambulances are used to cover up armed combatants against IDF and Israel illegal occupation, which is committing genocide in Gaza, is false. And there is extreme propaganda of Israel's Zionist government that is using it to commit more massacres and killings of innocent people. Thank you.
Okay, my apology. We played that one before and I did not delete, so we played that again. My apology for that. What about the issue of poverty?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How ironic it is for Mr. President Ramaphosa to talk about poverty. He has contributed immensely. His government has contributed immensely. His organization, the African National Congress, has contributed immensely. And it is very sad because I don't think he knows how to sleep in a hungry stomach. I don't think he's the right person to talk about poverty. Thank you very much. But it's too bad.
But then what should he do? Not talk about it at all? I mean, look, if you, as you say, you talk about his government and his party, but I mean, he's not the only president of that party for over 30 years. There's a whole range of other people, and there's no evidence, seriously, to suggest that we are poorer today because of Ramaphosa only. I mean, where's the evidence that suggests that? So should he not talk about social inequality because his party may have contributed in not fixing up the problems before?
Afternoon, Ashraf Mataboge. Ashraf, quick one about the Secretary of the UN. They don't have power. They are teethless. They just say, we condemn, we condemn, we condemn. There's nothing that protects or empowers them to deal with issues. Example is Israel's story. Thank you.
Okay, and there's another comment, and bring them up, whatever your views are. By the way, the issue of journalists under fire, feel free to comment about that. Teenage pregnancies, we've had lots of comment on that too, as well as malaria.
Hi, good afternoon, team. As long as parents are celebrating births of grandchildren as a blessing from God, even if their children are only like 14 or 15 or 16 or 17 years old, because we're never going to get to the root of this problem. So if parents who become grandparents actually show their displeasure, things will change.
But how do you know what they truly feel? Like, have they gone public to say we are delighted, we're very happy, or they are trying to make the best out of a very, very difficult situation? I just think there's a lot of fishing in that statement from you, because, I mean, do we really know what people think? Okay, let's talk about the IEC plans in the KZN.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, listen, by the way, feel free to bring us more comments. You know, we don't have the fireside chat any longer, just so that you know. Some people are asking me about it. Well, I mean, that all changed a couple of weeks back, so we don't have that fireside chat, this long profile conversation we have on a Friday, chilled, but great leadership things. I mean, that's moved on. So we have a series of normal in the news conversation. There's been a story that there's been an extension to the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. We'll get confirmation of that too shortly. Now, the IEC concluded a week-long stakeholder engagement program in KwaZulu-Natal. The Commission held a media briefing today to present key outcomes of the engagements, considering the implications of the voter participation survey for KwaZulu-Natal. It's interesting reading, I can tell you now. With me is Mosoto Mwepia, the IEC chairperson. I appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. Well, I noticed, I mean, you've concluded that stakeholder engagement in the region of KZN, but my first interest is some of the results of the voter participation survey for that region, which really jumped off the page for me. Tell me more about that.
Indeed, you know, the survey this time was very pointed and is looking at a number of challenging areas that we need to look at. In KwaZulu-Natal in particular, we are finding that, you know, there is a deepening dissatisfaction and declining confidence in democracy in that province, with satisfaction dropping sharply from 54% in 2004 to just 6% in 2025. That is for the province. If one looks at that on a national level, the decline is from 65% to 36% in the corresponding period. And we are finding that most adults continue to support democratic values, but feel that democracy is not working very well for them.
But those numbers are staggering. I mean, what you're saying, nationally, 65% of people believed in democracy as a solution to our problems. It's dropped down then to 36%. But in KZN, it's dropped from 54% to only 6%.
Yes.
Sure.
And what that means, you know, if you look on the other side of the coin, in KwaZulu-Natal, you know, there are many people who are now open to any other form of government other than a democratic government. In other words, we could simply have Ashraf being filling a position of an elected leader when he has not been elected, and that should concern all of us. And that's why we thought this is something we needed to attend to amongst others.
Yeah. So then tell me, what was the nature of the program this time around? How did you respond? Because you obviously had those numbers beforehand, right? How then did you respond?
Well, we have reflected on these numbers, but we've also tried to look at who these numbers would speak to in ways that they can engage them and assist in mitigating against some of these views and perceptions. And for that reason, we set out a stakeholder engagement across the province. Our stakeholder engagement included His Majesty the King, King Misuzulu Zulu. We spoke to the Premier. We spoke to political parties, religious leaders, and civil society organizations, the media. We are engaging with a whole set of interest groups in the elections, and we are pointing out areas where they could particularly be of great help to ourselves and the voters in general.
In getting those numbers and that 6% that still of declining trust in democracy, right?
Yes.
Did the respondents give reasons why they feel what they feel? I mean, has something triggered that?
Yes. Ashraf, it is evident, from the surveys, but even more palpable on the ground. There are many people in KwaZulu-Natal who say there is a party that has won a majority. They say a majority of the seats in the province, but they are not in government. And so they are talking about a majority of, or the highest number of votes received by a single party, but not a majority that is sufficient to form government. And they say, why would that then be an issue? The issue is not one, as you know, that is for us to deal with. The issue is that once we have declared results of an election, those who have been elected need to then elect amongst themselves their leaders in the legislature. And I think there is part of that which has played into this. But there is another part one can imagine may have played into this. The fact that there is a matter that is still in court, which affects, us and a party in the province. It's a matter that needs to be resolved so that people are clear about what the concerns are and what the facts are. Those are some of the things that may have also, have rendered the situation more difficult than it already is.
Okay, so you're saying that it could be a peculiar KZN issue specifically, and I mean, you're not saying it, but I would say it around, the oft-repeated claims from the MK party that they were that close to having the majority. They fell short, but under the current system, under the winner-takes-all system, they can find themselves squeezed out. Now, it's not for you to change the constitution, but doesn't that reflect the weakness of our electoral system, which means ordinarily, if a party didn't get the majority of 50+1, but they got 48% or 49%, shouldn't they at least then have that proportional representation in the executive? Isn't that a more fair, equitable way to do things?
Well, the law, as we have it, is what we have applied at the moment. There is an opportunity for electoral reform. As you know, there was an electoral reform panel that was established to look at this. The work of the panel is not concluded yet. And I do think that part of concluding that would need to take into account views such as the ones you have just raised.
I think it's a very, very big issue indeed. So in the light of that, what then have you done now in terms of state of readiness for this election? And part of that is just, let's call it voter awareness and voter education.
We are undertaking numerous measures. Amongst others, we have noted that we will require heightened and nuanced education to deal with some of the views that have been raised. We accept that there is an urgent need to rebuild public trust in democratic institutions, and amongst others ourselves. We are saying that to national governments, provincial governments. We are saying that to civil society organizations. But we are also recognizing that a collaborative approach to identifying and intensifying voter education is important. We also are looking at the need to combat misinformation and strengthen communication efforts. There is a lot that rides on misinformation, amongst others in this. For example, first in the IEC, in KwaZulu-Natal, is negatively impacted by the fact that there is a court matter that has not been concluded. And ordinary people are saying, why is it taking that long for that matter to be concluded? It is a matter outside of our hands, as you know, but the sooner we have that resolved, the better. Lastly, there is a commitment that we need to build towards peaceful, credible, and inclusive elections. These broad measures need to be supported extensively.
Now, a time for us all to reflect on that. Appreciate your time, the IEC chairperson, Mosotho Moepya. You've got lots of work, I know, in this coming few months, and the electoral reform conversation is another conversation to have, which I'll throw to the public. What would you like to reform, if you could, around our electoral system? 5:30, here's the news headlines with Greg.
Quick look at the headlines. The IEC is calling on political parties to help rebuild public trust. The UN chief has commended South Africa's efforts in highlighting inequality. And Lebanon says it wants to start deploying its army to the south of the country now that the ceasefire with Israel has been extended. There's a full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very busy Friday afternoon driving home into the weekend, but driving into a long weekend as well. So those long distance routes are under pressure. Perhaps nowhere bigger than the N1 through Mokopane. This is the road between Pretoria and Polokwane. High volumes today, plus the road closed now at Mokopane in the central area. A really big crash there early afternoon. Big enough to close the road both directions, and there's some really busy traffic as you come off the highway and reroute into some construction works along the R101 on the southern side of Mokopane. If you're going between Pretoria and Polokwane, factor in some very heavy queue time out that way. Tell you how much traffic's going there. The M1 in Pretoria backs from John Foster right through to Sefako Makato. That's really just a big volume of traffic, and of course a lot of that's going to run into that problem at Mokopane. N4 outbound towards Bronkhorstspruit. That's heavy through the roadworks today. Crash on Joburg's N3 south near the cement factory a little bit earlier. It's left a backlog from Limbro Park, and the N1 going south heavy to Winnie Mandela. The problem there, no lights. Winnie Mandela, Monte Casino, heavy getting in from Bryson across the highway, and that's why the highway southbound so backed up. This one just coming in, a very serious collision involving a taxi on Van Rynens Pass. Big volumes there. Southbound closed, northbound taking the contraflow, so big traffic both ways currently over that Van Rynens Pass section as well. Heading north from Moy River, stuck in some roadwork delays. That looks quite heavy. Durban, a breakdown on the N2 going north before Spaghetti Junction, causing a delay from the M7. A breakdown before Gateway, causing a big delay up the N2 from Kwamashu Highway. Cape Town, lots of pressure on the R300 tonight from Delft all the way down to Mitchell's Plain. Various broken down vehicles on that route. The N2 from the airport out to Spine Road at Khayelitsha is heavy, and then from Macassar through Somerset West, another big volume slowdown on the N2 outbound. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Tumi only wants to talk about the derby, like nothing else but the derby. First thing, second thing, third thing, the derby.
And I've been listening to the voice notes from our listeners. They've been saying 5-0, 5-0. Wow. It'll be interesting to see if Chiefs or Pirates would be able to get that scoreline. But former Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns forward Katlego Kilampela has put his head on the block and backed Amakosi to overcome Orlando Pirates in Sunday's Soweto derby. All eyes will be on the clash at FNB Stadium this weekend as Pirates look to maintain their current advantage in the Betway Premiership title race, where they led Sundowns by a solitary point, having played one game more.
I think both teams on form. They've won their past few games, but like we always say, form doesn't matter when you go to the Soweto derby. It's all about pressure and the pride on the day, and obviously the history of both teams. But I'll be a bit biased here because the other team has to win the league as well. So I'll go for Chiefs 2-1.
Meanwhile, Stadium Management SA CEO Bertie Grobler has welcomed statistics that place the Soweto Derby as the biggest club football derby in the world by active in-stadium attendance in 2026. This surpasses other major derbies, including matches at Camp Nou, currently limited due to renovations, and Argentina's Super Clasico at Estadio Monumental, which hosts around 85,000 spectators. Grobler emphasized that hosting such a massive sold-out event comes with significant responsibility.
Yeah, first, it's a privilege to do so, but it's also a lot of responsibility. And I said it to my team in a meeting yesterday, we take it personal. And over the last year and a half, according to me, the experience is not how it should be. And I'm not referring to anything related to the inside of the venue and the quality of what is presented inside. The experience of getting to the venue is not up to the standard that I believe is world class. And there's been a lot of work put into that. And it's always nice when things goes well to put up your hand and say, no, it's us. And if things go bad and not according to plan, to point fingers at others. But the planning of an event of that magnitude is obviously entails a lot more than just the venue.
Well, the Portfolio Committee on Sports, Arts and Culture has recommended that Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie dissolves the Board of Athletics South Africa over ongoing governance failures. Committee Chairperson Joe McGlue says that there has been little progress in resolving issues such as leadership instability, poor financial management and unpaid prize money to athletes. Despite repeated assurances from Athletics South Africa, the department and South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee, the situation has worsened. And in terms of rugby, Sharks coach JP Peterson is hoping that his side can make it a memorable occasion for Siya Kolisi, who is set to earn his 50th cap for the KZN franchise in their must-win round of 16 United Rugby Championship clash against Edinburgh. The World Cup winning captain is named on the bench after recovering from a calf injury in what could be his final appearances for the club. The Sharks currently sitting 11th on the URC standings, 11 points behind the playoff places, with 3 league phase matches remaining. Having also played alongside him, Peterson described Kolisi as both a great player and an exceptional human being. Meanwhile, in motorsport, the Turkish Grand Prix will return to the Formula One calendar in 2027 for the first time in 6 years. The event will run on the Istanbul Park circuit until at least 2031, and the track is where Lewis Hamilton clinched his record-equaling 7th World Drivers' title in 2020. Turkey held a Grand Prix from 2005 to 2011 before dropping off the schedule, although it returned for 2 years in 2020-21 when F1 needed venues to fill the calendar during COVID-19 pandemic. And still talking about motorsport, Ashraf, I was listening to the sports minister just yesterday, and he was saying that they still want the F1 to come through to South Africa. And as you've alluded to before, is that he said he's going to go with President Cyril Ramaphosa to attend the F1 Grand Prix later on this year as efforts to get it to come through to South Africa. And they're saying they're still trying to make sure that they can meet all the requirements for it to come to South Africa. And it's not a social trip for them. He made sure that he said that it's a work trip, and they're just trying to get F1 to come to South Africa.
So he's not pulling a fast one?
No. Okay. With that said, ke nna Tumen Kgapela, Modimo ke yo.
SAFM Music. Good times, good memories.
I'm just like somebody fine.
Old school sounding so good. SAFM Music, with you wherever you go.
Right. You know this, of course, don't you, right? Top Billing brings you the very best in lifestyle, luxury and inspiration. From breathtaking homes and dream destinations to exclusive access to the people shaping culture and success. This is where style meets substance and every story shines. So tune into the new season. It is the new season of Top Billing on S3. Thursdays at 9 p.m., but it starts next week, Thursday, the 30th of April. And then it repeats on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. on SABC 1. You can also stream Top Billing itself on SABC Plus. Top Billing, the best of the good life.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, what we'll do now is let's do our Madlanga Commission wrap-up of the day, right? And then reaction from you, of course. Suspended Tshwane Metro Police Department Deputy Chief Umashi Dlamini testified at the commission where he told the commission that his brothers had a close relationship with the late alleged Big Five cartel leader Jonathan Msibi. Now, early on in the day, the evidence leader, Advocate Matthew Chaskelson, probed the deputy chief about WhatsApp messages between Sergeant Fani Nkosi and the Tshwane Metro CFO, Gareth Mnisi. So listen to this. This is what Advocate Chaskelson asked about the compliance engagement, in this case here, between Nkosi and Mnisi.
Or the documents that are supposed to be under lock and key at the BEC in order to check for compliance with those 7 companies.
Yes.
But he cannot lawfully do that. He's not supposed to have access to those documents.
Which is impractical for the CFO to do that.
It's not impractical, it's unlawful.
I'm saying it's impractical because I don't think he has the keys for...
So how can he be telling Sergeant Nkosi that he's going to be checking for compliance of those 7 companies?
I'm not sure about it, SC.
He can't lawfully check for compliance with those 7 companies. You'll accept that?
I agree with you that he can't check compliance.
So I want to come back to you in your role as Head of Internal Affairs at Tshwane. You now, on your version, have a situation where the CFO is communicating with Sergeant Nkosi. He's undertaking, on your version, to check for compliance of 7 companies in a pending tender. And you know that he cannot lawfully do that because he cannot lawfully have access to those documents. Did you take this further?
No, SC.
Why not? The CFO is committing to Sergeant Nkosi to do something which is unlawful in relation to a tender at Tshwane, on your version.
Much as I'm saying, I'm not privy of what are they talking, what is it that the CFO might have committed to Sergeant Nkosi.
Right, the commission then moved on to a tender for what is called the Matthews Posa municipality, and I say that in inverted commas, right? And the reason is, Chaskelson then pointed out that such a municipality does not exist.
It seems that, at least in relation to what we've just been looking at, you have exchanged many texts with Sergeant Nkosi in relation to matters of procurement.
That's correct, SC. I did not discuss matters that relate to procurement.
So how do you characterize what's happened here, where we've seen a constant back and forth in relation to messages concerning TMPD1, and on your version, although the messages say one thing, you've had lots of calls with Sergeant Nkosi where he's explained that he doesn't want to rig the tender in favor of Ngapesheya and El Shaddai. He actually just wants you to check for compliance of those 2 companies and to check for compliance of other companies that were assisted by NICO.
Yes, SC, as I indicated, I was just transmitting the names as requested by Sergeant Nkosi. I did not discuss any procurement matter with him.
And then Advocate Chaskelson proceeded to ask the Deputy Chief Dlamini about his WhatsApp exchange with Sergeant Nkosi on the issues of procurement.
We're now approximately 2 weeks later. It's the 13th of April. And in chat number 3, you sent to Sergeant Nkosi at 6:03 p.m. a list of 5 issues, followed by an explanation at 6:04. So your 6:03 message says lease agreement for both company and director for rates and taxes. Interpretation of PI Act. 3 years financials must be done by independent auditor and signed or certification that they've been audited. 4, lease agreement of vehicles. The document submitted of Avis is a quotation. We need an agreement with photos of vehicles, including a 5-ton truck. 5, public liability insurance for 10 million. And then at 6:04, you say, afternoon, Captain, I trust you are well and your family. Please push Becky to submit the above documents. What was this about?
As it was indicated by Sergeant Kosi to say they were dealing with a tender in Mpumalanga.
Yes, Sergeant Corsi said that it was for the Matthews Pausa municipality, but no such municipality exists. In fact, Matthews Pausa sent me a message to say there's no municipality named after me. Which municipality do you say it was?
I don't know, SC.
So you say this is a different tender. It's not your tender. That's not the TMPD tender.
That's what I indicate, SC.
Why were you getting involved in this process?
Much as I indicated, I referred, Sergeant Kosi to Nico, and Nico will usually send me, messages to either forward to Sergeant Kosi. You'll still get the same of 456, the message that I also sent around May or so. So he assisted them with different, documents, tender documents.
So much to come out of all of that. Finally, the suspended Tshwane Metro Police Department Deputy Chief Umashi Dlamini was then probed on a message from Sergeant Nkosi and subsequently asked how the CFO became involved, given the matter was between Nico and Becky Nkosi. Are you confused? Listen.
I think, SC, you'll understand that companies bid throughout the year. Wherever there's an opportunity, they put tender documents.
So, fortuitously, El Shaddai and Ngapeshe are both bidding for the Tshwane contract tender, and they are on the list at the top of the priority list that you and the CFO and Sergeant Nkosi have been discussing, and quite fortuitously, in the context of this problem about the Mpumalanga, the alleged Mpumalanga bid, Nico is busy with El Shaddai documents when Sergeant Nkosi wants him to be busy with Ngapeshe documents. It's just a coincidence that. Is that what you're saying?
SC, I'm saying in most instances, companies that bid, they bid almost either weekly, monthly, and so forth in various municipalities and so forth. So I take they were busy with this one for other bidders also, assisting the other company and so forth.
Let's read on. He's spoken to Nico when he was busy with documents of El Shaddai. Nico promised to help, but now he's no longer answering his phone. Please check, Nico. I will push Becky. These people must know it's one thing and they must work as a team, not other way. And then, please, General, intervene. We can't lose now. We have been waiting for this for a while. Now, you're saying you're not talking about the Tshwane tender. You're talking about a different tender. You're nodding.
Yes.
Now, that tender, if it exists, would still not have reached the closing date for bids if what Nico and Becky were doing was lawful. There would still be an opportunity to submit a bid in the future.
That's correct.
How does that square with Sergeant Nkosi saying, please, General, intervene. We can't lose now. We've been waiting for this for a while. What would they have been waiting for if the bid deadline had not even been reached yet.
I take SC that because the CFO is helping, Sergeant Gossi in other areas. I take it that, either they made arrangements somewhere and so forth, so much as he's saying that.
You're listening to yourself. You've just said the CFO.
Yes.
Are you listening to yourself?
Yes.
But you are being asked about Nico here.
No, I'm being asked about the statement of Sergeant Gossi when he says, we have been waiting for this for a while.
So you're saying this is what's happening at Tshwane?
No.
Then how does the CFO get involved?
Much as I'm saying, the CFO is assisting Sergeant Gossi in other areas.
How does he get involved in this one that we're talking about? Because here it's Nico and Beggy. The issue is between Nico and Beggy. How does the CFO get involved with this one?
Commissioner,
unless it's a Tshwane tender that we are talking about here.
It's not
a Freudian slip, Deputy Chief.
Okay, that's the wrap for the week. We'll do it again next week. Remember, same time, 5:45.
Investing shouldn't feel risky. It should give you security and good returns. Earn up to 7.25% interest per annum with an Absa Cash Invest Tracker for an investment of 100,000 rands or more. Your capital is guaranteed with immediate access to your funds. That's minimum risk, maximum benefit. Absa Private Banking customers can invest from just R1. Open via the Absa Banking app, a branch, a private banker, or 0860 111 515. Your story matters. Absa is an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons, right here on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, with me, KG Mwekezi.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, we're getting to your WhatsApp comments in a moment. You can even send a text message. If you're sending a WhatsApp, 30 seconds, please, right? But I need to hear you. Get your calls live. Kaya in the Eastern Cape. Go for it, Kaya.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Good afternoon, indeed.
Ashraf, I just want to comment on what Mr. Zungula was saying, that I agree with him totally on General Mkonas, that it would have been a perfect replacement. However, I disagree with him with regards to Rolf Meyer, because then we need to appease America. We need America. And there's a lot at stake here, as you know it. So I think with the matter of Mr. Rolf Meyer, then I disagree with him. Then the last point.
So you're saying you're okay with Rolf Meyer? That's what you're saying, right?
That's what I'm saying. I'm okay with him because he was saying he's having a problem with the fact that Ramaphosa is trying to appease America, and you don't need America. It cannot dictate who we should send to them and stuff like that. I'm saying, well, I think at this point the president is right. He's quite right, because we need America. We know we're a developing country and we need America.
And look, just on that point, I mean, if I can just add my own thoughts on that one. I think you're right. We must understand, and you're not the president, neither am I, right? But if you're in the position of leadership of a country or a big organization, it is a huge balancing act. Now, South Africa has been critical of America, and so has America has been critical of us. But when you appoint an ambassador, especially in the light of what's happened with the Ibrahim Rasool issue, you have to be strategic and tactical. This is tactical, I would think. It's not philosophical. Correct. It's tactical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the last point for me, Ashraf, is the national dialogue. I don't know what happened to it. Is the Madlanga the national dialogue? And if it is, can then the scope of work be extended? Because then I think the Madlanga would be able to actually deal with the national dialogue. I think they're the appropriate people, to be honest with you. So if the national dialogue has disappeared and it appears that the national dialogue is the Madlanga Commission, then let them extend the scope of work. Thank you so much, Ashraf.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, thanks for reminding us, Kaya. Thank you for that. In fact, that's a good question from Kaya. What has happened to the national dialogue? I know there were subcommittees, but we're hearing nothing. What are they waiting for? And Kaya's point to you is, if the national dialogue is in fact, or if the Madlanga Commission is the manifestation of the national dialogue, which means cut out the rotten stuff first, then extend it in all directions. Okay, would you be okay for that? Madlanga Commission is the national dialogue. Right, comments from you. In fact, we had a chat about teenage pregnancies, right? Let's get responses on that too.
No parent will be happy to have a teenage child pregnant. That is why some go to an extent of aborting the child. They make sure that their grandchild is aborted, because it is a painful experience. You expect your child to progress in life, not to make you a grandmother when you are not ready. It's such a painful experience, and you end up accepting the child so that your child can pass that grade, not that you are happy with the grandchild.
Okay, I think you've made your point very, very clearly.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Andux Deben. Just a word of appreciation and gratitude to the Madlanga team, the investigators, everyone who's there. These guys are working very, very hard. I appreciate what they are doing. I appreciate it very much. I just hope and wish the outcomes of that commission will be put in use. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I mean, looking at a tweet from Yusuf Abramji about a crashing transit robbery in Vosloorus, and then people there have got wads of notes, thick, the type. I mean, I'm working it out. It's probably 1,000 rands. The guy's and he's waving and on video. Sibongile in Soweto, hi.
Hi, Ashraf.
You want to talk about the Madlanga dialogue, right?
No, the national dialogue, not the Madlanga dialogue.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, the national dialogue is on first. The issue that is being prepared now is the roadmap. I would say my position is I'm in the immigration sector.
Okay. And I'm glad you called in. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. So, we are still having pilot debates that are not official yet, but just to break the ground.
Okay.
But I would just like to say it's on.
But let me ask you. Let me then ask you this, right? You said you're busy with the roadmap. Two things. Why is it taking A, so long? And B, right? Because there's been nothing heard about the commission this entire year, 2025. We at the end of April already. So surely the communications needs to be stepped up in terms of giving us a sense of where they are. True.
That is the steering committees. They are just, remember when such things is a lot of different groups meeting together. Some are agreeing on one thing, so it's that thing. But I think they are nearly there. Soon. Definitely soon, when the roadmaps are now fixed and being agreed on, then that is when people now will know the roadmap and what's going to happen.
Well, thank you for calling in, and best wishes with that roadmap. Absolutely, Sibongile. Thank you so much for that. Right. Your last comment I'll get from you is this.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Andux Deben. Just a word of appreciation and gratitude to the Madlanga team, the investigators, everyone who's there. These guys are working very, very hard. I appreciate what they are doing. I appreciate it very much. I just hope and wish the outcomes of that commission will be put in use. Thank you very much.
Well, we're already seeing dramatic changes, don't you think so? Anyway, look, that's the show. I'll be back on Monday. Have a fabulous weekend. Monday is a public holiday. It's Freedom Day. A lot to reflect on that 30 plus years of democracy, where we are, right? And it's not just freedom, it's justice. So we'll talk about that then. John Carrick is in the house. His show comes up now, just after the news for an hour. So listen out for that. Right now, it's Greg Close, as always, with the news at 6.